Welcome to the Laughter Cabinet, where the jokes are always flowing and the good times never stop.
I never imagined that the end of my career would look like this, standing in a narrow alleyway, clutching a crumpled flyer for a place called the Laughter Cabinet. My name barely legible under a faded neon sign that sputtered like an old man clearing his throat. It was one of those nights where the city seemed to hold its breath. The usual hum of life dampened by rain and a creeping fog that rolled in like a bad joke waiting to fall flat. I glanced at the flyer again, the words Underground Improv Club staring back at me like a dare. Eddie Malone, I muttered to myself, voice rough from years of disuse, the comeback king, or at least the comeback court jester. The irony wasn't lost on me. My last televised meltdown, the one that ended it all, played in my mind like a looping slapstick gag, except it wasn't funny then, and it wasn't funny now. But desperation, as they say, makes strange bedfellows, and here I was, about to step into the unknown. The door was unassuming, wedged between a laundromat and a taqueria whose sizzling smells momentarily distracted me. The handle was cold, and it resisted my push like it didn't want me in. When it finally gave way, I was greeted by a narrow staircase descending into darkness, the faint scent of stale popcorn and cheap whiskey leading the way. I hesitated, fingers brushing against the damp brick wall, then descended. Each step echoed with the faintest hint of laughter, soft, almost conspiratorial. The basement opened up into a club that felt like a relic from another era. Dim amber lights cast long shadows, and a haze of cigarette smoke curled lazily in the air despite the no-smoking signs. The worn wooden floor creaked under the feet of a motley crowd, faces illuminated by the flickering stage light. I spotted Carla behind the bar, her eyes sharp and amused, as if she'd been expecting me all along. "You the new act?" she asked, polishing a glass with a rag that had seen better days. "Something like that," I said, swallowing my dry throat. "Well, Eddie," she smiled, "the show's about to start. Hope you were ready to bomb." The irony stung but also sparked something deeper inside me. I was ready to bomb. I had no other choice. Backstage, I paced, muttering jokes to myself, rewriting punchlines that had lost their punchiness years ago. My hands trembled as I gripped the microphone, the spotlight cutting through the smoke like a spotlight on my shame. The audience was a sea of expectant faces, some eager, some skeptical, most probably wondering if I was just another washed-up has-been chasing ghosts. I started with a few tentative lines, flinching as silence swallowed them whole. Then came the real disaster, a joke about my infamous meltdown that landed like a lead balloon. The crowd's discomfort was palpable. Some winced, others shifted in their seats. I stumbled through the rest of my set, each failed punchline heavier than the last. But then, something odd happened. The air around me seemed to warp, a subtle ripple like heat waves rising from asphalt on a summer day. The cracked walls flickered, shadows stretching and bending as if reacting to my failures. A glass on the bar trembled but didn't fall. A chair tilted on two legs, balancing precariously. The room's atmosphere shifted between moods, laughter, confusion, unease, like a kaleidoscope spinning out of control. I didn't understand it yet, but my bombing was changing something. The club itself seemed alive, responsive to the comedy of failure I was unwittingly crafting. Carla caught my eye from behind the bar, her smirk deepening into a smile that was both warning and welcome. After the set, I stumbled off stage, heart pounding, unsure if I just ruined any chance of a comeback or stumbled into something far stranger. The Laughter Cabinet, it seemed, was more than just a name. It was a door to a world where failure was not an end, but a beginning where my worst moments might just rewrite reality itself. I didn't know it then, but the joke was on me, and it was about to get dangerously funny. The dim glow of the underground club was both inviting and oppressive, a paradox Eddie felt deep in his bones as he slumped onto a cracked leather stool at the bar. The Laughter Cabinet was alive in a way that defied logic, and Eddie's senses struggled to keep pace. His disastrous first set lingered in the air like a bad aftertaste, an explosion of silence, awkward coughs, and forced chuckles. Yet, something else was brewing beneath the surface. He rubbed his temples, trying to dislodge the fog of self-loathing clouding his mind. It was then that his eyes caught the microphone resting on the stage's edge. It was the same prop from his set, but now it seemed to breathe. The metal twisted and stretched, bending like taffy under some invisible hand. The soft purple lights above cast elongated shadows that danced and flickered erratically, as if the space itself was rebelling against the ordinary. "Did you see that?" Eddie whispered to no one in particular, a nervous chuckle escaping him. Behind the bar, Carla polished a glass with deliberate patience, her eyes sharp and knowing. "You're not imagining things," she said softly, sliding the glass of whiskey across to him. "Things don't stay as they were once you bomb here. The club it reacts." Eddie's gaze darted back to the stage where the warped microphone now snapped back into its original shape, like nothing had happened. He blinked, wondering if his exhaustion was playing tricks. But the ripples in the air told a different story. The audience seats, mostly empty now, still held ghostly echoes of laughter, but it was off, distorted. Sometimes it was delayed by a heartbeat, other times it rose too quickly, a manic crescendo that left a ringing in Eddie's ears. The laughter seemed less like amusement and more like a warning, twisting and contorting the space around him. "What do you mean? React?" Eddie asked, his voice a mix of skepticism and desperate hope. Carla leaned in, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "The club's old. Older than it looks. Some say it's cursed, others call it magic. Performers who bomb here don't just fail, they change the very fabric of this place. The aftershocks of failure ripple out, warping reality in small, unpredictable ways." Eddie swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. "So my terrible jokes. They did this," she nodded. "And it's not just the club. Sometimes things outside shift too. You'll notice if you pay attention." The room flickered again, the lighting dipping into an icy blue that sent a shiver down Eddie's spine. The air thickened with a charged energy, as if the walls themselves held their breath. He felt a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. His failure was no longer just a personal defeat. It was a force, a dangerous, unpredictable force. "Why me?" he muttered. "Why does bombing give me this power?" Carla's eyes softened with sympathy. "Maybe because the worst failures hold the greatest truths. Or maybe it's just the club's twisted sense of humor." Eddie laughed bitterly, the sound echoing oddly in the charged silence. He knew one thing for sure: his life was no longer going to be the same. And whether that was a blessing or a curse, he couldn't yet say. As he nursed his drink, the aftershocks of failure rippled again this time. A chair near the bar bent impossibly, folding into a sculpture of human laughter frozen in time. Eddie's heart pounded. The absurdity of it all was both terrifying and strangely beautiful. He glanced around the club, wondering what other secrets it held, and if he was ready to dive deeper into the madness. Because here, in the laughter cabinet, bombing wasn't just a mistake, it was a beginning. The laughter cabinet was a labyrinth of shadows and muffled laughter, the kind of place where the walls themselves seemed to breathe with a mischievous pulse. Eddie Malone, still reeling from his first catastrophic set, slipped off the stage like a man trying not to attract attention from the ghosts of his past. His heartbeat thudded loudly in his ears, drowning out the faint hum of distant conversations and the clatter of empty glasses. He found himself in a cramped back room, a cavernous space that smelled faintly of stale beer and old smoke, walls plastered with peeling posters of shows long forgotten. It was here that he noticed her, a streak of electric blue hair amidst the darkness, a sharp silhouette leaning casually against a graffiti-scarred brick wall. Lola Sparks. Her eyes, bright and assessing, flicked up to meet his. There was a spark there, a wildness that matched the chaos Eddie had only just begun to comprehend. "You re the guy who made that mess on stage," she said, voice low but edged with amusement. "Eddie Malone, right?" The guy who bombs so hard reality itself starts to glitch. Eddie blinked, caught off guard. "Yeah, that's me," he said, a half smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I'm the disaster act." Lola chuckled, the sound sharp and quick like a whip crack. "Disaster's an upgrade around here," she quipped. "Most folks try to nail their sets, but you're rewriting the rules every time you flop. That's something special, even if it's, well, weird as hell." He shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of the weight of her gaze. "I don't get it," he admitted. "Why does bombing make things change? Why does the club flicker and warp after I mess up?" Lola pushed off the wall, stepping closer with a grin that was both inviting and challenging. "Because, Eddie, this place isn't just a club, it's a crucible, a place where comedy isn't just performance, it's reality bending. And you're the wild card." He swallowed hard. "Wild card?" "Yeah," she said, eyes gleaming. "You're the guy who bombs and the world pays attention. But that power, it's dangerous. Uncontrolled, it could tear this place apart, or worse." Eddie felt a strange mixture of dread and fascination. Here was someone who saw him not just the washed-up comedian fumbling his way through a comeback, but the weird, improbable force he was becoming. And she wasn't offering pity, she was offering a challenge. "So what do I do?" he asked. Lola smirked. "You embrace the chaos. Learn the rules, then break them on your own terms. Or stay scared and watch the whole thing unravel. Your call." They sank onto a battered couch littered with crumpled scripts and half-empty coffee cups. As Lola recounted fragments of the club's strange history, stories of performers who'd vanished into punchlines, reality loops that snared entire audiences, Eddie listened, mesmerized. Her words were laced with sarcasm and a dark kind of affection, a love letter to a place that defied logic but thrived on absurdity. "You know," Lola said, leaning back with a wry smile, "most comedians want to be the hero, the guy who kills every set. But here, it's the flops that make the magic. You're not failing, Eddie. You're succeeding in a way no one else can." Eddie laughed, a short, bitter sound. "That's the cruelest joke I've heard all night, maybe," she said. "But sometimes the cruelest jokes are the ones that make you see the truth." Their banter spiraled into a dance of meta-humor, each testing the other's boundaries, poking fun at the absurdity of their situation. Eddie found himself relaxing for the first time in years, the heavy cloak of self-doubt lifting just enough to let a flicker of hope through. As the night deepened, Lola's presence became a beacon in the surreal fog enveloping the club. She wasn't just a performer. She was a maverick, a guardian of chaos, and perhaps Eddie's only chance to navigate the strange powers now entwined with his fate. The clock ticked toward dawn, but Eddie's mind was already racing ahead, fueled by Lola's challenge. Could he really embrace the unpredictable power of failure? Could he stop running from the shadows of his past and step fully into this bizarre new reality? The answers weren't clear, but one thing was certain: the Laughter Cabinet was no ordinary club, and Eddie Malone was no ordinary joke. The game had changed, and the next act was about to begin. And in the back of his mind, a small, stubborn voice whispered, maybe bombing was just where the real show started. But just as Eddie was beginning to imagine possibilities beyond the wreckage of his past, a sudden flicker of the club's lights caught his eye, a subtle, unsettling ripple passing through the air like a breath caught between worlds. The laughter outside was still, hanging in the air like a challenge. Eddie glanced at Lola, who caught his gaze and nodded knowingly. "Welcome to the real show," she said, as the boundaries between comedy and chaos blurred once again. The shape of jokes the room was thick with expectation, but not the kind Eddie Malone was used to. The murmur of the crowd was less a lullaby and more a low hum of impatience, as if the audience sensed something was about to go wrong, or perhaps something utterly wrong. Eddie gripped the microphone, his fingers trembling ever so slightly beneath his worn leather jacket. His pulse echoed in his ears. This was not the usual nervousness before a set. This was something stranger, deeper, laced with an undercurrent of wild possibility. Lola Sparks' words from earlier echoed in his mind. Embrace the bomb, Eddie. It's your power. Let your failures shape the world. Her rebellious grin flashed like a neon sign in the dim backstage corridor, and for once, Eddie felt a flicker of hope behind his usual cloud of self-doubt, taking a breath that tasted like cold coffee and desperation. Eddie stepped onto the stage of the Laughter Cabinet, the underground improv club that pulsed with a strange energy, like a living, breathing creature fed on laughter and chaos. The lights were low, casting long shadows that danced with the jittery movements of the audience. Faces blurred into a sea of expectant eyes, waiting to see what the faded comic would do next. He began with a joke so bad it was almost criminal. Why did the chicken? Actually, never mind, it didn't cross the road because it was too busy questioning its existence. The punchline flopped like a lead balloon, landing in the silence like a bad karma coin. Groans rippled through the crowd, and Eddie felt the surreal electricity spike around him. That was when the chair next to the microphone started to change. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the wooden legs stretched and twisted, curling into a shape that defied logic. It was as if the chair were trying to tell a joke of its own in a language no one but Eddie could understand. Gasps and confused laughter bubbled from the audience, faces flickering between amusement and bewilderment. The club itself seemed to breathe, the walls undulating gently like the ebb and flow of a dream. Eddie blinked, unsure if he was hallucinating or if the bombing really was warping reality. Backstage, Lola leaned against the brick wall, her bright hair a beacon in the dimness. "See," she whispered conspiratorially as she watched the spectacle unfold. "Your failures aren't failures. They were the punchlines the universe didn't know it needed." Eddie's mind raced. Could he really control this? Was the absurd chaos his new craft a comedy of errors with cosmic consequences? Each failed joke, he realized, was a brushstroke painting the very fabric of existence with wild, unpredictable colors. He tried another, deliberately worse this time. What do you get when you cross a mime with a tax auditor? Silence. And a really aggressive audit. The silence that followed was dense and awkward, but the floor beneath his feet rippled like water, and for a moment, the stage seemed to tilt precariously. The audience shifted uncomfortably, but Eddie felt a surge of power coursing through him. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. He was no longer just a comedian bombing on stage. He was a reality bender, an agent of absurdity wielding the dangerous magic of failure. Later, in the quiet solitude of the dressing room, Eddie stared into a cracked mirror. His reflection fractured into jagged pieces, each shard reflecting a different version of himself: the rising star, the broken man, the cosmic jester. The fractured glass was a perfect metaphor for the shifting timelines and warped realities he had started to command. He whispered to himself, maybe failure isn't the end. Maybe it's the beginning of something absurdly powerful. The challenge was clear: to master the art of bombing, to turn his worst moments into weapons of change without losing himself in the chaos. The line between comedy and catastrophe was thinner than ever, and Eddie was standing right on its edge, ready to leap into the unknown. With Lola's sharp wit as his guide, and the strange pulse of the Laughter Cabinet beneath his feet, Eddie Malone was beginning to shape jokes that didn't just land, they reshaped the very stage on which life played out. And as the lights flickered once more, he grinned that ironic smile, ready to bomb like never before. The shape of jokes was no ordinary chapter in Eddie's comeback story. It was the moment his failures became the foundation of a new reality. And with every twisted punchline and warped prop, the absurd dance of comedy and chaos deepened, pulling him further into the surreal heart of the Laughter Cabinet. But the question lingered, unsettling and persistent. How far could he push this dangerous power before the joke turned on him for good? The laughter, after all, was only just beginning. The backstage of the Laughter Cabinet was a labyrinth of peeling paint, flickering bulbs, and the faint hum of muffled laughter bleeding through cracked walls. Eddie Malone shuffled through the narrow corridor, the weight of his latest disastrous set still heavy on his shoulders. The crowd's reactions had been a chaotic symphony of awkward silence, stifled coughs, and the occasional nervous chuckle, not the kind of energy that usually bent reality. Yet, the subtle oddities he'd begun to notice whispered of something far stranger at work. As he rounded a corner, a figure stepped from the shadows, Moss, the club's enigmatic gatekeeper. An older man with a bowler hat perched at a rakish angle and a perpetually raised eyebrow that seemed to pierce through all pretenses. Moss's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile as he regarded Eddie with a mixture of amusement and something deeper, something almost ancient. Eddie Malone, Moss intoned, his voice low and textured like worn velvet. Or should I say, the architect of unexpected realities. Eddie blinked, uncertain whether to laugh or run. "I'm just trying to remember my lines," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. "Lines." Moss chuckled softly, stepping closer. "In this place, my friend, the lines are more like suggestions. And you're bombing. It's the kind of suggestion that rearranges the furniture of existence." They moved deeper into the backstage area, where the air smelled of aged paper, stale coffee, and something indefinably theatrical. A small office space lay cluttered with yellowed playbills, cracked leather-bound journals, and a scattering of odd trinkets, a broken prop mic here, a cracked joke bell there. Moss gestured expansively, his eyes gleaming beneath the brim of his hat. The Laughter Cabinet isn't just any club. It's a crucible where comedy and reality entwine. It's a place born from absurdity and sustained by the delicate dance between order and chaos. Eddie leaned in, captivated despite himself. "So, it's like a magic club." Magic, Moss mused, is merely the language of those who dare to speak beyond the obvious. Here, laughter isn't just sound. It's the mortar holding the building of reality together. And bombing. Bombing is the hammer that rearranges the bricks. A faint, almost imperceptible pulse seemed to ripple through the room, the very walls breathing with a life of their own. From somewhere distant, laughter echoed, sometimes warm and inviting, other times sharp and dissonant. The boundary between performance and existence blurred, and Eddie felt the vertigo of that strange threshold. "You see," Moss continued, "the club's power is a double-edged sword. Too much order, and the magic suffocates. Too much chaos, and reality unravels. Your failures, your bombs, are the wild cards that keep the balance precarious but alive." Eddie swallowed hard. "So, I'm not just screwing up, I'm essential." "Precisely," Moss said, tapping a finger to his temple. "But beware, Eddie. There are those who would seek to tip the scales toward control, order, at the expense of chaos, and others who revel in anarchy without responsibility. Both threaten to shatter what we hold dear." The older man's gaze sharpened, and for a moment, the weight of his warning hung heavy in the smoke-laden air. "Remember," Moss whispered, "to walk the tightrope without falling is the greatest joke of all." Before Eddie could respond, Moss tipped his hat and vanished back into the shadows, leaving behind a silence thick with portent. Eddie stood alone, the riddle of the club's existence settling into his bones. The laughter outside swelled and dipped, a chaotic symphony that now felt more like a calling. He realized that his bombing was no mere accident, it was the key to a deeper mystery, a power that demanded understanding and mastery. The Laughter Cabinet was not just a stage for failed jokes. It was a battleground for the soul of comedy itself. As Eddie stepped back toward the dim glow of the stage entrance, he caught sight of his reflection in a cracked mirror, wary eyes, an ironic smile, and a flicker of something new purpose. The show was far from over, and the real performance was only beginning. Eddie's footsteps echoed softly as he navigated the backstage corridors once more, the club alive with the hum of whispered conversations and shifting shadows. The knowledge Moss had imparted was both a puzzle and a promise. The balance between order and chaos wasn't just a metaphor, it was a living, breathing force, and Eddie was now a player in its drama. He thought back to his earlier sets, the way his bombing had caused props to warp and timelines to flicker. It wasn't random. It was a language, a syntax he was only beginning to understand. Each failed punchline wove new threads into the fabric of reality, threads that could unravel or strengthen, depending on the intent and control behind them. But how to control the uncontrollable? How to wield failure as a tool rather than a curse? Moss's riddles echoed in his mind, a call to embrace absurdity without surrendering to it. The club was a paradox, a sanctuary for the chaotic soul, and a fortress against the sterile forces that sought to dominate creativity. Eddie's gaze drifted toward the stage entrance. Somewhere out there, the audience waited, oblivious to the cosmic bollet unfolding behind the curtains. He was no longer just a washed-up comic. He was a custodian of a fragile magic, a jester with the power to reshape worlds through the art of bombing. And with that realization came a flicker of hope, dark, absurd, and utterly exhilarating. The laughter cabinet beckoned, and Eddie Malone was ready to answer its call. Victor Crane's arrival at the laughter cabinet was like a cold wind cutting through the warm haze of absurdity that had settled over the underground club. I first noticed him the way you notice a shark fin slicing through calm water, sudden, sharp, and impossible to ignore. The backstage area, usually cluttered with the restless murmurs of performers prepping for their turns, fell into a hushed silence as his polished shoes clicked authoritatively on the worn wooden floor. Even the flickering neon signs seemed to dim, as if the club itself was holding its breath. He was tall, impossibly sharp in a tailored suit that looked like it was stitched from shadows, his cold, calculating gaze sweeping the room like a predator assessing its territory. A permanent smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth, one that promised both charm and danger in equal measure. I, slouched against a cracked brick wall in a corner, felt my heart thud unevenly, part fear, part something else I couldn't quite name. This was no ordinary newcomer. This was someone who understood the stakes of this strange place far too well. Eddie Malone, he said, his voice smooth and low, yet carrying an edge that cut deeper than any heckler's barb. I've heard whispers about you, the comedian who bombs so spectacularly his failures ripple reality. Fascinating talent. A shame it's so uncontrolled. I straightened, trying to hide the twitch of nerves. Talent, you being kind. Usually it's just embarrassing. Victor's smirk deepened. Embarrassment is a form of failure, Mr. Malone. And failure, as you've discovered, holds power here. But power without control is chaos, and chaos is a risk I intend to manage. His words hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. I wanted to retort, to tell him that chaos was the very essence of what made this place alive, but something about the cold certainty in his gaze made me pause. Lola Sparks, my sharp-witted ally with her brightly dyed hair and fierce loyalty, appeared beside me, her eyes narrowing as she took in Victor's imposing figure. Don't listen to him, she hissed under her breath. Victor wants to cage the club's magic, turn it into something sterile and predictable. We can't let that happen. I nodded, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Victor wasn't just a threat to me, he was a threat to everything the laughter cabinet stood for. The absurdity, the unpredictability, the dangerous magic born from bombing, all of it was at risk of being snuffed out by his cold ambition. Later, I found Victor standing alone on the balcony overlooking the club, the city's neon lights casting fractured reflections on his crisp suit. His eyes were fixed on the swirling cows below, calculating, planning. Behind his cold exterior, I caught glimpses of something darker, memories of past failures, obsessions that had twisted into a ruthless hunger for control. The encounter left me with more questions than answers. How could I, a washed-up comedian who only found power in failure, stand against a man determined to impose order on the very chaos that defined me? And more importantly, was I ready to embrace the chaos, fully to use it as a weapon rather than a curse? The club hummed with nervous energy as the night wore on, the shadows growing longer, the air thick with the promise of conflict. I knew this was only the beginning. Victor Crane's arrival had cast a long shadow, one that would test every joke, every failure, every ounce of wit I had left. But if there was one thing I'd learned from bombing on stage, it was this: sometimes the worst mistakes could change everything. And maybe, just maybe, that was the punchline I needed to survive. And so, with a shaky breath and a heart full of absurd hope, I stepped back into the fray, ready to face the old shadows that threatened to swallow the laughter cabinet whole. The laughter, after all, had to go on no matter the cost. The backstage hallway of the laughter cabinet hummed with low murmurs and the occasional clink of glasses. Shadows stretching along graffiti-streaked walls like reluctant audience members waiting for the next act. Eddie Malone lingered near the cracked mirror, adjusting his worn leather jacket with a nervous twitch. The familiar scent of stale beer mixed with the faint tang of sweat and old stage varnish filled the air. Tonight, he was supposed to be the joke again, but something else was brewing too. He caught a flicker of movement down the corridor and froze. A figure slipped through the shadows with a grin that was less friendly and more a challenge. Jinx, the club's infamous troublemaker and Eddie's most persistent thorn. Lean and quick, with unruly dark hair that seemed to dance to its own chaotic beat, Jinx was no stranger to stirring the pot. Tonight he was up to something, Eddie could tell, planning to make me look worse than usual. Eddie muttered under his breath, eyes narrowing. He wasn't sure whether to be annoyed or oddly grateful. After all, if anyone could make bombing look spectacularly interesting, it was Jinx. The club's pulsing neon sign flickered, casting a surreal glow over the peeling posters of past performers, some faces smiling, others frozen in mid-laughter or horror. Eddie took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage, the familiar weight of the microphone in his hand anchoring him, even as his heart skittered like a nervous squirrel. Jinx's sabotage was subtle but effective, a prop here that wouldn't behave, a microphone cable that buzzed oddly, a cue card switched at the last moment. But as Eddie launched into his routine, the sabotage didn't just trip him up, it warped reality itself. The rubber chicken that was supposed to be a small, harmless prop suddenly ballooned to enormous, cartoonish proportions, flapping its floppy wings and honking with a surreal honk that echoed like a cosmic joke. The audience's laughter rippled and shifted, folding over itself like a kaleidoscope of amusement and confusion. Eddie stumbled, eyes wide, but something strange happened. The more he bombed, the more the club seemed to warp and bend. Audience members briefly flickered into different outfits, the stage lights pulsed with erratic colors, and the air thickened with an electric charge of absurdity. Backstage, Lola Sparks watched from the wings, her bright hair catching the neon like a flare. Her eyes were sharp, a mixture of concern and fierce loyalty burning within. She cornered Jinx with a glare that could slice through the thickest fog of nonsense. "You were playing with fire, Jinx," she warned, voice low but intense. "This isn't just a game. The club's reality is fragile. Your sabotage could break more than just a set tonight." Jinx shrugged, a mischievous grin tugging at his lips. "Relax, Lola, it's just a little chaos. Besides, Eddie could use some excitement. Excitement that could ruin us all," she snapped, stepping closer. "You don't get what's at stake here." Meanwhile, Eddie tried to regain his footing on stage, weaving his misfiring jokes into a tangled dance of self-deprecation and surreal mishaps. The audience's laughter rose and fell in unpredictable waves, and Eddie felt the strange power of his bombing coursing through the club's veins. Each failure was a pulse, a ripple that reshaped the space around him in unpredictable ways. After the set, the club emptied into a hush, the aftermath of chaos settling like dust motes in a beam of fading light. Eddie found himself face to face with Jinx in the quiet backstage room, the tension between them thick enough to cut with a punchline. "You're messing with forces you don't understand," Eddie said, voice low but steady. Jinx's grin softened just a fraction, a flicker of something resembling respect, or maybe shared bewilderment passing between them. Maybe. But maybe we were both learning how to play the game. Eddie shook his head with a wry smile, the irony not lost on him. In the laughter cabinet, even enemies could become unwitting allies in the absurd dance between failure and power. And tonight, the line between sabotage and salvation blurred into a cosmic punchline only the club could deliver. As he left the stage, Eddie wondered not if he would bomb again, but how far the fallout of those fumbles might ripple, and whether he could keep the laughter from tipping into chaos. The game was changing, and so was he. But one thing was certain in the laughter cabinet: every failure was a new beginning, and every joke, no matter how bad, held the power to rewrite reality itself. And as the dim lights flickered one last time, Eddie prepared for whatever absurdity the night might throw at him next, knowing that in this underground world of dangerous comedy, the only safe bet was to embrace the fumble, the stumble, and the glorious, unpredictable mess of it all. It was just past midnight when Eddie Malone found himself alone in the green room behind the stage of the laughter cabinet, the air thick with the lingering scent of stale beer and burnt coffee. The room was small, claustrophobic, lit only by the flickering of a cracked old television screen in the corner, which hummed softly, casting erratic shadows on the peeling walls. He sat slumped at a battered wooden table, a clutter of crumpled notes and half-empty pens strewn about like casualties of a long, losing battle. His fingers trembled as they darted over the surface of a yellowed notepad, scratching out jokes and punchlines in a furious scribble. Each time he read a line aloud, a weak quip, a forced pun, he immediately grabbed an eraser or the edge of his hand and smudged it into oblivion. Why did the chicken cross the road? Because it was running from the existential dread of being a punchline, he muttered in a dry, wary voice, then shook his head and tore the page free, tossing it onto the growing heap. "No, no, no," he whispered, his voice cracking with self-reproach. Too safe, too obvious, too pathetic. It had become a ritual. The endless rewriting, the compulsive pacing, the self-inflicted torment of not being good enough. But tonight, the stakes felt different, heavier. The club's strange magic pulsed faintly in the background, a silent witness to his unraveling. Somehow his failures carried weight here, distorting more than just his career, they bent reality itself. The television flickered again, and Eddie's gaze was drawn involuntarily to the screen. Static gave way to a younger, sharper version of himself, bright-eyed, hopeful, standing under bright lights on a televised comedy special. The laughter was warm, inviting, until it wasn't. Gradually the scene soared. The jokes fell flat. The laughter turned forced, then mocking. His face twisted in panic, words stumbling out in a chaotic mess. The meltdown, the infamous televised disaster that had become his personal scarlet letter, played out in excruciating slow motion. The audience's jeers echoed in the dank room, mixing with the pounding of his own heart. Eddie closed his eyes and swallowed hard, the shame of physical weight pressing down on his chest. "God, what a mess," he whispered. "If only I could rewrite the past like these damn jokes." A sudden knock at the door jolted him back to the present.
"Hey, Eddie!"
"You still alive in there?" Lola's voice, sharp and teasing, cut through the gloom. The door creaked open, and she stepped inside, her brightly dyed hair practically glowing under the flickering light. Her edgy, rebellious vibe was a stark contrast to the room's drabness. Her eyes sparkled with mischief and something softer, something like concern. "You look like a man possessed by every bad punchline ever written," she said, folding her arms and leaning against the doorframe. "Or maybe just haunted by one televised disaster." Eddie forced a bitter chuckle. "You have no idea." Lola pushed off the doorframe and sauntered over, picking up a crumpled sheet from the table. "You know," she said, reading aloud one of his discarded lines. "Why did the existential chicken cross the road? That's some heavy stuff for a comedy club. Maybe you're trying too hard to be profound." He groaned. "Profound? I'm trying to survive. Every night's a minefield. One wrong joke and you bomb." Lola finished and reality bends. "Yeah, we know. But maybe it's not the bomb that's the problem. Maybe it's how you think about bombing." Eddie looked skeptical. "Enlighten me. What if bombing isn't failure? What if it's your superpower? He raised an eyebrow, the irony not lost on him. My superpower is embarrassing myself in front of strangers. She grinned. Exactly. The world shifts because of your failures. Maybe that's more powerful than any perfect joke. Before Eddie could respond, the door opened again. Carla, the bartender, appeared, wiping her hands on a rag. Her sharp eyes softened when they landed on Eddie. Hey, Eddie. Heard you were rewriting the universe again, she quipped dryly. Or just your jokes? He gave a weak smile. Both, apparently. Carla slid onto the edge of a chair, her voice low and steady. Look, kid, I've seen a lot of comedians come and go in this place. The ones who survive aren't the ones with the best jokes. They're the ones who find a way to laugh at themselves. Eddie sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Easier said than done. Sure, Carla said, but maybe you don't have to do it alone. This club's weird magic. It's real, but it's also about community. About finding your place in the chaos. Lola nodded enthusiastically. And we're here to help you figure that out. Eddie glanced between the two women, the weight on his shoulders feeling just a little lighter. Maybe it's time I stopped rewriting the punchline and started living it, he said quietly. Lola clapped him on the back. Now you re-talking. Outside, the muffled sounds of the club's audience drifted through the walls, the laughter, the gasps. The unpredictable rhythm of a place where comedy and chaos danced dangerously close. Eddie took a deep breath, steeling himself for the next set. He didn't know what the night would bring, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a flicker of something like hope, and as the door swung open once more, the shadow of Victor Crane flickered in the hallway, a cold reminder that the fight for the club's soul was only just beginning. Eddie looked down at his crumpled notes, then back at the door, and whispered, "Let's rewrite this story." The punchline was still unwritten. The warm glow of the bar was a small comfort against the chill Eddie felt creeping up his spine. The laughter cabinet, with its flickering neon signs and perpetual murmur of restless laughter, felt less like a place and more like a living entity, one that watched, waited, and whispered secrets in the spaces between jokes. Eddie had found himself, once again perched at the bar, the worn oak surface sticky with the residue of countless spilled drinks and forgotten nights. Across from him, Carla worked with the practiced ease of someone who'd seen it all. Her fingers moved rhythmically, polishing a glass that never quite seemed to dry. Her sharp eyes flicking up to meet his with a glint of mischief and something softer understanding. "You look like you, recarrying the weight of the world on your shoulders," Carla said, her voice low and steady, breaking the comfortable silence that had stretched between them. Or at least the weight of a particularly stubborn punchline. Eddie managed a faint smile, the ironic curve of his lips more habitual than genuine. Funny how failure can feel heavier than success. She chuckled, a sound dry and knowing. In this place, failure isn't just a feeling, it's a force. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Eddie had felt it, the strange aftershocks of his bombing, the subtle shifts in air and light, the way the audience's reactions warped like ripples on a disturbed pond. But hearing it framed so plainly by Carla made it all the more real. "You want to know about the club?" Carla asked, leaning in slightly, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The laughter cabinet isn't just a venue. It's a crucible. A place where comedy and chaos collide, where the rules bend like badly delivered punchlines." Eddie's eyes narrowed, his curiosity piqued despite himself. "And the performers, they were part of the story too," Carla said, gesturing behind the bar toward a wall adorned with photographs. She reached up and tapped one gently, a sepia-toned image of a man mid-joke, eyes wide and mouth frozen in an expression somewhere between terror and delight. "They come, they play, they fail, and sometimes they change the world." The idea was absurd, yet Eddie felt a shiver of recognition. The club was more than a stage. It was a living tapestry woven from the threads of success and disaster, laughter and dread. "Take Marv," Carla continued, her tone dipping into storytelling cadence. He was the first to really understand the power here. A comedian with a knack for bombing so spectacularly it bent reality. He tried to control it, like he controlled his sets meticulous, rehearsed. Didn't end well. Eddie listened, the shadows around the bar seeming to deepen as the stories unfolded. Each tale was a brushstroke painting the club's strange portrait performers who vanished after a particularly bad set, others whose jokes rewrote the past, and some who simply lost themselves in the swirl of chaotic laughter. So what keeps the club going? Eddie asked. If it's so dangerous, why do people keep coming back? Carla shrugged, her smirk returning. Because it's the only place where failure means something. Where bombing isn't the end, but the beginning. Where the absurd becomes real. Her words resonated in a way that startled Eddie. For so long, he had chased success, feared failure. Here, failure was a kind of magic, a wild card that could reshape the world if wielded with enough courage or madness. You were not the first to feel overwhelmed, Carla said, noticing his tension. This place tests you. It reveals who you really are beneath the jokes and the spotlight. Eddie took a slow breath, letting the weight of her perspective settle. He looked around the cracked walls, the flickering lights, the faces both eager and wary in the crowd, and felt the strange pulse of the club's heartbeat. What happens if someone loses control? He asked quietly. Carla's eyes flickered with a shadow, then the cabinet breaks, the balance shatters. And sometimes the joke's on all of us. A sudden flicker caught Eddie's eye, a brief distortion in the bar's mirror. For a moment, the reflection shimmered, and the faces in the photographs seemed to shift, their eyes gleaming with secrets too heavy for words. The room felt alive in a way he hadn't fully grasped until now. This place has history, Carla said, her voice steady despite the eerie moment. Stories that don't always make sense but always leave a mark. Eddie swallowed the lump in his throat and nodded. I guess I'm part of that history now. She smiled, a rare warmth breaking through her usual sardonic demeanor. That's the thing about the laughter cabinet, you don't get to choose your role. But you do get to decide how you play it. As the night deepened and the crowd's laughter wove a rich tapestry of sound around them, Eddie felt something shift inside. The fear and doubt that had gripped him loosened just a little, replaced by a tentative hope wrapped in absurdity. Carla slid a half-filled glass toward him, the amber liquid catching the light like liquid gold. To failures that change worlds, she toasted, her eyes sparkling with mirth and melancholy. Eddie clinked his glass against hers, their quiet laughter mingling with the chaotic hum of the club. In that moment, amid the swirling shadows and whispered jokes, he glimpsed the strange, fragile magic of the place, a magic he was only beginning to understand, and that he would soon have to wield. But for now, he sat back and listened, letting Carla's tales wash over him like a balm for his battered confidence. The laughter cabinet was no longer just a stage. It was a crucible of absurdity and hope, and Eddie was ready to step deeper into its strange light. And somewhere in the distance, the faint echo of laughter promised that the next act was just beginning. The air outside the laughter cabinet was thick with fog, curling lazily around the dim glow of streetlights as Eddie Malone pushed open the heavy door and stepped into the night. The cool dampness kissed his cheeks, a sharp contrast to the stifling, laughter-laden heat of the club behind him. He blinked, rubbing the sweat from his forehead, still tasting the bitter aftertaste of his latest disastrous set. His jokes had bombed spectacularly, the audience's laughter a cruel cacophony of disbelief and discomfort. Yet, something strange had happened. A little thing, almost imperceptible, but enough to prick at the edges of his mind like a forgotten punchline refusing to die. He turned down the narrow street, the neon sign of a nearby diner flickering overhead. It was meant to spell Pete's Place, but tonight, that sputtered and died, leaving a glowing Pete's Place. Eddie's brow furrowed. He shook his head, blaming the fog or the exhaustion, but the nagging feeling persisted. It was as if the world had hiccuped, a subtle twitch in the patchwork of reality. No, that didn't happen before, he muttered to himself, voice low and hoarse. Did it? His footsteps echoed hollowly as he made his way back inside. The club was quieter now, the night winding down. At the bar, Carla was wiping down glasses, her sharp eyes catching his unsettled expression. Rough set, she asked, sliding a glass toward him. You could say that, Eddie replied, managing a wry smile. But it's not just that. Something weird's happening. After I bombed, I noticed. Stuff outside wasn't quite right. Carla raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched into the creases of her face. Weird how? Like that neon sign out there, Eddie said, motioning vaguely. It flickered and changed, small stuff, but it felt off. She studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Eddie, you've been under a lot of stress. Maybe it's just your mind playing tricks. He shook his head, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. No, Carla. It's real. I think my bombing, my failed jokes, they rechanging things. Not just here, but out there, in the real world. Carla's lips twitched into the ghost of a smile. That's a hell of a theory. Before Eddie could respond, Lola Sparks slid onto the stool beside him, her brightly dyed hair a splash of rebellion in the dim light. She grinned, eyes sparkling with mischief and something deeper understanding. He's not crazy, she said, nudging Eddie's shoulder. I've seen it too. The club's reality isn't just a stage trick. It bends and twists with every joke, every flop, every laugh and groan. Eddie looked at her, hope flickering amid the chaos. You mean, it's not just me? Nope, Lola said, pulling out a crumpled photograph from her jacket. Look at this. Eddie took the picture, squinting. The club's facade shimmered and rippled, edges blurring like a mirage. Every time he blinked, the image shifted, doors appeared where there were none, windows changed shape. Colors danced unpredictably. It's like the club itself is alive, Eddie whispered. Lola nodded. And our failures, they were the heartbeat. The realization was dizzying. Eddie felt the weight of it settle deep in his chest, a mix of awe and creeping dread. If his bombing could ripple out and warp reality, how far did that power stretch? Could he control it? Or was he a walking chaos bomb waiting to detonate? That night, Eddie wandered the city streets alone, the fog wrapping him in a ghostly embrace. He stopped beneath a flickering street lamp. Its light pulsed erratically, shifting from pale yellow to a soft blue and back again, as if uncertain of its own existence. He reached out, fingers trembling, and the light steadied, bathing the sidewalk in a steady glow. Okay, he said to the empty street, this is definitely happening. A shiver ran down his spine, not from the cold, but from the undeniable truth that his failures were no longer just personal embarrassments. They were forces that could shape the world itself, and with great power came great, absurd responsibility. As the fog thickened, Eddie's ironic smile returned, tinged with nervous anticipation. The game had changed. The stakes were higher. And somehow bombing had become his greatest weapon. But could he wield it without losing himself or the fragile reality hanging by a thread? The first ripple had spread, and the laughter was just beginning. Lola Sparks was waiting for him where the backstage corridors twisted like a labyrinthine joke only the initiated could appreciate. The faint buzz of muffled laughter and the occasional sharp snap of applause seeped through the cracked walls, creating a soundtrack that felt both alive and conspiratorial. Eddie shuffled forward, his wary eyes catching the glint of Lola's brightly dyed hair, which seemed almost to pulse with the club's electric energy. You look like you just lost a fight with a bad pun, Lola grinned, her voice low and urgent as she grabbed his arm and pulled him into a shadowed alcove. Come on, Malone. Time to learn what this place really is. Eddie barely had time to protest before he was swept along a winding path of narrow hallways plastered with faded posters of past performers, some faces familiar, others ghostly in their obscurity. Graffiti crawled across the walls, a chaotic tapestry of jokes, insults, and cryptic symbols that seemed to shimmer and shift if you stared too long. The Laughter Cabinet isn't just a club, Lola began, her tone dropping to a whisper as they skirted past a locked door with strange sigils etched into the wood. It's a battleground, a sanctuary, and a powder keg. Eddie squinted, feeling the weight of her words settle like smoke in his lungs. A powder keg for what? For chaos, Lola said, eyes flashing with a fierce light. This place thrives on it, on the unpredictable, the absurd, the failures that crack reality wide open. But there are those who want to tame it, to bottle that power and sell it like some corporate joke. Her voice was tight with anger and something deeper, a protective loyalty that Eddie hadn't quite expected. He thought back to Victor Crane, that cold smirk and calculating gaze lurking in the shadows, always ready to pounce. A man who saw the club as a tool, a way to control and dominate. I've been watching, Lola continued, keeping the vultures at bay. But it's getting harder. Victor's influence spreads like a bad punchline that just won't quit. They paused in a cluttered storage room that smelled of dust and old magic, surrounded by odd props and relics from centuries of laughter and disaster. Lola's hand hovered over a battered puppet, its painted grin cracked and faded. This club's magic, she said, is fragile. If it falls into the wrong hands, the absurdity that keeps it alive will be snuffed out. The balance will tip. Eddie swallowed hard, the irony not lost on him. A balance maintained by failed jokes and chaotic comedy, and here he was, the poster boy for spectacular bombing. So, he murmured, "What do we do?" Lola's grin softened, but the fire in her eyes did not dim. We fight, we keep the chaos alive. And we make sure the laughter never ends, even if it means bombing harder than ever. The words hung in the air as they made their way back to the main stage. Eddie felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration, the weight of responsibility settling over his shoulders like a cloak woven from punchlines and broken dreams. Later, standing alone in the spotlight, Eddie looked out at the empty seats, bathed in the soft glow of the club's surreal lighting. The hum of unseen energy pulsed around him, a reminder that the battle for control was just beginning. He clenched his fists and smiled wryly. Failure wasn't just his curse anymore, it was his weapon. And with Lola by his side, maybe, just maybe, they could keep the chaos alive long enough to rewrite the rules. The Laughter Cabinet was no longer just a club. It was a war zone, and Eddie Malone was ready to bomb like never before. And as the quiet laughter of the universe echoed in the shadows, he couldn't help but wonder, what punchline would reality throw back next? The game was on, and the stakes had never been higher. One misstep, one failed joke too many, could unravel everything. But Eddie had never been one to play it safe. After all, in a place where bombing was power, the only way forward was through the absurd. And so, with a deep, ironic breath, Eddie stepped off the stage into the unknown, ready to face whatever twisted punchlines awaited him next. The laughter was far from over. The dim glow of the club's aging neon signs blurred through the cracked windows, casting fractured shadows across the cramped sound booth, where Silas sat hunched over an ancient mixing console that looked like it had been cobbled together from relics of a forgotten era. His thick-rimmed glasses caught the flickering light as his fingers danced across the glowing knobs and sliders, each movement deliberate, almost ritualistic. Around his neck hung a tangle of headphones, their cords looping and twisting like serpents coiled in readiness. The low hum emanating from the equipment thrummed through the walls of the Laughter Cabinet, vibrating in tune with the very fabric of the club's bizarre reality. Eddie Malone lingered just outside the booth, his usual self-deprecating grin replaced by a wary curiosity. The air around him felt charged, alive with a strange energy that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He had been here long enough now to realize that the club was no ordinary underground comedy joint. Reality here bent, twisted, and occasionally snapped like a rubber band stretched too far, all seemingly triggered by his own spectacular failures on stage. "You replaying with fire," Lola's voice cut through the charged silence as she leaned against the booth's doorway, her bright hair aflame in the dark. "You know that, right?" Silas didn't look up, his gaze fixed on the oscillating waveforms dancing across the screen before him. "And fire's exactly what this place needs," he replied cryptically, fingers flicking a switch that sent a ripple through the club's atmosphere. "You'd be surprised how much a little tweak here and a subtle nudge there can stabilize the chaos." Eddie stepped closer, drawn by the strange combination of technical mastery and arcane ritual Silas wove together. "I've seen the walls breathe, the air shimmer like it's alive. What exactly are you doing back here?" Silas finally turned, a faint shimmer flickering in his eyes that Eddie couldn't quite place, like a secret joke only half understood. "Sound isn't just sound in this place," he said softly. "It's a thread that weaves through reality. When you bomb, when you fail, you tear at that thread. I'm here to mend it, twist it, and sometimes to make sure it unravels in just the right way." Lola's eyes narrowed. "And what if you pull too hard? What if the thread snaps?" A shadow passed over Silas's face. "Then we all fall through the cracks. But that's the risk we take to keep the magic alive." The club's murmur shifted as the next act prepared backstage. Eddie felt the familiar flutter of nerves, that gnawing cocktail of dread and hope. But tonight, something was different. The sound waves seemed to wrap around him like a protective cocoon, softening the edges of his anxiety. As he took the stage again, the laughter from the audience wasn't merely sound. It was a living thing, ebbing and flowing with the rhythm of Silas's unseen hand. Each failed joke twisted the club's reality, but now, instead of chaos spiraling wildly out of control, the distortions held a strange melodic balance. Back in the booth, Silas's fingers moved in a blur, fine-tuning the invisible threads that held the club's twisted reality together. "You're not alone in this," he murmured to himself, a rare smile flickering. "We were all part of the same joke, after all." Lola's sharp voice interrupted his reverie. "Just don't forget, even the best punchline can be a double-edged sword." The night wore on. Each set a new gamble on the knife edge between order and chaos. Eddie felt the thrilling surge of power that came from embracing his failures, his bombing resonating with Silas's magical soundscapes to create a surreal symphony of absurdity. The club pulsed, breathed, and warped around them, a living testament to the dangerous beauty of comedy's unpredictable magic. As the final act ended, the audience's laughter faded into a soft murmur, and the club settled into an uneasy calm. Eddie caught Lola's eye and nodded a silent acknowledgement of the precarious balance they maintained. Outside, the city hummed with indifferent normalcy, unaware that beneath its streets, in the flickering shadows of the laughter cabinet, a battle for reality itself was being fought, one failed joke at a time. And somewhere in the depths of the club, Silas prepared for the next act, ready to weave his magic once more, because in this place, sound was power, failure was strength, and the line between comedy and catastrophe was thinner than ever. The question now was not if the thread would hold, but how long before it snapped. Eddie took a deep breath, stepping back into the spotlight, ready to bomb with purpose and knowing that the sound of his failure might just save them all. The laughter, after all, was only just beginning. The fluorescent lights above the stage buzzed like a swarm of disgruntled bees, and the air in the laughter cabinet was thick with the scent of stale beer and nervous anticipation. Eddie Malone tugged awkwardly at the collar of his worn jacket, the fabric sticking faintly to his clammy skin. It had been years since he'd felt the spotlight's glare so sharply, years since the laughter had died on his lips and the cameras had turned away. Tonight, though, he was back in the belly of a club that thrummed with an energy both familiar and eerily new. The crowd's faces blurred into a sea of expectant eyes, some eager, others skeptical. Eddie shuffled his notes, the ink smudged and barely legible, and stepped into the harsh circle of light. His voice cracked as he launched into his first joke, a clumsy attempt at self-deprecation that fell flat like a stone skipping a pond. The silence was immediate and brutal. A bead of sweat traced a slow path down his temple as he forced another punchline, only for it to dissolve into awkward shuffles and stifled coughs. Then, the impossible began. The microphone cord twitched, elongating serpentine-like before coiling around the stand with a hiss. The brick walls wavered, their rigid structure rippling as if buffeted by an invisible wind. Audience members froze mid-laughter, their expressions frozen in a grotesque tableau of surprise and confusion. Eddie blinked, heart pounding, the surreal spectacle unfolding like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. Backstage, Lola Sparks' sharp eyes caught the distortions from the wings. Her brightly dyed hair shimmered with unnatural hues as she darted toward the stage, voice cutting through the chaos like a whip.
Eddie, stop! You're losing it!
She shouted, but her words seemed to bend and echo strangely, swallowed by the shifting reality around them. Victor Crane sat high in his shadowed booth, his cold gaze unwavering as the club's fabric tore and twisted below him. A smirk curved his lips. This chaos was a chessboard, and every unpredictable move was a step closer to his ultimate checkmate. His loyal enforcers watched silently, the tension in the room palpable. Near the bar, Carla wiped down glasses with a rag that seemed to absorb the flickering light. She exchanged a cryptic glance with Moss, the club's enigmatic gatekeeper, who adjusted his bowler hat with a knowing raise of his eyebrow. Their whispered riddles hinted at ancient balances and fragile powers, while Silas, the sound technician with a magician's touch, twisted dials and sliders in a desperate attempt to anchor the club's reality before it unraveled completely. Onstage, Eddie's mind raced. Each failed joke wasn't just an embarrassing stumble, it was a fracture in the very fabric of existence. The power of his bombing stretched far beyond the punchline, warping the world with every falter. Panic threatened to overwhelm him, but beneath it simmered a reluctant awe. This was his gift, terrifying and uncontrollable, a weapon forged from failure itself. As the club's walls flickered between solidity and distortion, Eddie forced himself to breathe, to focus. If his failure could tear reality apart, could he learn to wield it? Could he turn chaos into a tool, rather than a curse? The laughter around him was now a twisted chorus of madness and possibility. The night was far from over, and Eddie Malone was only just beginning to understand the dangerous comedy he had stumbled into. The laughter cabinet was alive, and it was hungry for more. The echoes of that disastrous set would ripple far beyond the club's underground walls. Somewhere, deep in the shifting shadows, Victor Crane's smile widened, and Lola Sparks braced herself for the battle ahead. In that moment, the boundary between laughter and chaos blurred into an unrecognizable, exhilarating new reality. And Eddie Malone, for all his flaws and fears, stood at its center, bombing not just for laughs, but for survival. Victor Crane's presence was beginning to feel like the slow tightening of a noose around the laughter cabinet. The once haphazard, wonderfully chaotic underground club had started to hum with a new kind of energy, one more ordered, more controlled, and disturbingly strategic. It was as if the very air inside was being meticulously measured, bottled, and repurposed. Eddie Malone could feel the shift as keenly as the first prickling sensation before a storm. Backstage, Victor's influence was unmistakable. A small cadre of performers, handpicked for their loyalty and ambition, gathered around him like moths drawn to a cold flame. These were no ordinary improv artists. They were his enforcers, his eyes and ears within the club's labyrinthine corridors. Their faces were a mix of eager resolve and cautious calculation, knowing well that the stakes had risen beyond mere laughs. Victor stood at the center of the group, his tall frame commanding the dimly lit room. The flickering neon signs outside cast shifting shadows across his sharply tailored suit, accentuating the cold precision in his calculating gaze. His permanent smirk seemed less a sign of amusement and more a silent declaration of intent, a promise that chaos would soon be subdued under his iron will. "Order is the foundation of greatness," Victor intoned, his voice smooth but edged with steel. "Without control, the club will crumble. The magic here is powerful, yes, but dangerous. It needs discipline, direction." One of the loyalists nodded, eyes gleaming with a mixture of admiration and fear. "We re ready to enforce, Victor," Whatever it takes. The others murmured assent, their presence a stark contrast to the club's previously anarchic spirit. Meanwhile, Lola Sparks paced nervously in the green room, her brightly dyed hair a beacon of defiance against the oppressive mood settling in. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, washing her edgy style in a clinical glare. Her expressive eyes found Eddie's wary gaze, and she didn't waste a second. "Victor's not playing games anymore," she said sharply, voice low but urgent. "He's recruiting, consolidating. The club's becoming a battlefield, and we were caught in the crossfire." Eddie sighed, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "I thought we were past the point of order and control," he muttered, the irony not lost on him. This place was supposed to be chaos, absurdity, a refuge for the messed up and the funny. Lola shook her head, frustration flickering in her eyes. "It still can be. But only if we don't let him win. We need to find a way to push back before the laughter dies." The tension between them was palpable, an unspoken acknowledgement that the stakes were higher than ever. In the shadows of the club, Jinx prowled with a mischievous grin, the scruffy rival performer intent on sowing discord. His latest sabotage, a subtly displaced prop, sent ripples through the set, causing unexpected reactions from the audience. The laughter that followed was a strange amalgam of amusement and discomfort, a perfect illustration of the club's precarious state. Jinx's antics, while chaotic, inadvertently played into Victor's narrative. The incident was cited by the new regime as proof that without strict control, the club would spiral into madness. It was a twisted irony that didn't escape Eddie, who watched the unfolding drama with a mix of exasperation and reluctant admiration. The inevitable confrontation came quietly but with electric intensity. In a narrow, shadowed hallway lined with peeling posters of past performers, Victor and Eddie's gazes locked. The cold, calculating smirk met the wary, ironic smile, a collision of past grievances, ambitions, and unspoken threats. "You still don't get it, Malone," Victor said softly, voice dripping with condescension. "This isn't about jokes anymore, it's about power. Control. The future of this club and reality itself depends on order." Eddie's reply was a dry chuckle, the sound echoing strangely in the confined space. "And you think you're the one to bring it? The great Victor Crane, master of failures turned dictator of laughs." Victor's smirk deepened. "Failures make the best rulers because they know what's at stake." As they parted, the charged silence lingered, a promise that the gathering storm was about to break. The gathering storm wasn't just metaphorical. The very fabric of the laughter cabinet vibrated with the tension, the once vibrant and unpredictable magic now shadowed by the specter of control. Eddie felt the weight of it all pressing down, a tidal wave of expectation, fear, and the burning need to fight back. But the question remained, how could he, a man whose power came from failure and bombing, stand against a force so calculated and determined? The answer, like the club itself, would have to be found in the laughter that danced on the edge of chaos. With a heavy heart and a mind racing through possibilities, Eddie prepared for the battle ahead. The laughter cabinet was no longer just a place to bomb, it was a battleground for the soul of comedy, and the fight was just beginning. The lights dimmed, the murmurs grew hushed, and somewhere deep in the club, the laughter waited ready to explode, to bend reality, to defy control. And Eddie Malone was ready to step back into the spotlight, not as the fallen star, but as the reluctant guardian of the absurd. The gathering storm had arrived, and with it, the promise of a reckoning unlike any the club had ever seen. The low hum of the underground club was a deceptive lull, a quiet before the inevitable storm. Eddie Malone sat in the shadowed corner of the laughter cabinet, the dim glow of neon signs casting fractured colors across the worn wood table. A half-empty glass of something brown and bittersweet sat untouched before him, the ice slowly melting like his fading hope. Across from him, Lola Sparks leaned in, her eyes sharp and restless, a flicker of rebellion in their depths that never quite faded. "Victor's tightening his grip," she said, voice low and urgent. You can feel it in the way the performers look at him now, like he's the puppeteer of this whole twisted circus. Eddie exhaled, the weight of the club's escalating tension pressing against his ribs. He could still barely believe how far things had spiraled. His failures on stage, the bombing that once felt like a curse, had become a weapon, one that now painted a target on his back. "I thought I was just losing my touch," he muttered, not walking into a power play. Lola's laugh was short, bitter. "Welcome to the big leagues." The conversation was interrupted by the faint clack of heels against the worn floorboards. Jinx, ever the wild card, approached with an unreadable expression. Normally her presence was a thorn in Eddie's side, a rival performer with a knack for sabotage and mischief. Tonight, however, there was something different in her stride, a hesitation that set Eddie's nerves on edge. "Got a minute, Malone?" she said, voice low and somewhat strained. Eddie exchanged a wary glance with Lola before nodding. He rose, following Jinx to a secluded alcove where the club's muffled chaos seemed a distant echo. The air was thick with anticipation, a silent drumbeat of impending revelation. Jinx's eyes darted around before settling on Eddie's face. "You need to know what's really going on." He raised an eyebrow. "Enlighten me." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Victor's not just trying to manage the club. He's planning to take full control, lock down the power that the bombing brings. He's got people on his side, insiders ready to enforce his will." The words hit like a punchline gone wrong, twisting the knife of betrayal deeper. "And you retelling me this? Why?" Jinx hesitated, the usual smirk replaced by something raw and conflicted. "Because I'm done being a pawn. Because I think you're the only one who can stop him." Eddie's mind raced, the fragile trust he'd held on to fracturing under the weight of this revelation. The club, once a sanctuary of chaotic creativity, had become a battleground of control and resistance. And in this game, allegiances were as unpredictable as the jokes that bent reality itself. Meanwhile, above the fray, Victor Crane stood on the balcony overlooking the laughter cabinet. The harsh spotlight framed his tall, imposing figure, his cold gaze sweeping over the gathered performers who hung on his every word. His voice was smooth, calculated. "Order is the foundation of true power," he declared. "Chaos is a playground for the weak. Together, we will harness this club's potential and reshape reality on our terms." The crowd murmured, a mixture of fear and reluctant admiration. Victor's vision was seductive, a promise of stability in the swirling madness. Yet beneath his polished exterior lurked the scars of past failures, a hunger for control that threatened to consume everything. Back in the shadows, Eddie found himself drawn to the empty stage. The spotlight above cast a harsh circle of light, illuminating the microphone stand that had become both his altar and his battleground. He stared at his reflection in the polished floor, fractured and distorted, like the man he felt himself becoming. The sting of betrayal burned hot, but beneath it, a spark of something darker and more resolute took hold. Failure had been his curse and his gift. Now, betrayal was a new kind of fuel. If Victor wants a war, Eddie whispered to the empty room, he's going to get one. The club's laughter, once a distant echo, seemed to swell around him, a chaotic symphony of possibility and peril. The battle for the laughter cabinet had begun, and Eddie Malone stood at its heart, armed with nothing but his wit, his failures, and a dangerously unpredictable power. The night stretched on, thick with tension and unspoken threats. Eddie knew he would have to navigate treacherous alliances and confront the shadows of his own past if he was to stand a chance. But for the first time in a long while, amidst the ruin of trust and the chaos of betrayal, he felt a flicker of dark hope. And as the spotlight dimmed, Eddie's ironic smile returned, sharper and more defiant than ever. The joke was on Victor, but the punchline was still unwritten. The game had changed. The stakes were higher. And in the laughter cabinet, where reality bent and twisted with every failed joke, the next act promised to be the most dangerous yet. Eddie's journey was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The backstage air felt thick with something electric, a charged mixture of fear, anticipation, and the faint scent of stale beer that always clung to the underground walls of the laughter cabinet. Eddie Malone paced nervously, fingers twitching as he fiddled with the worn notebooks stuffed with jokes, most of them terrible, some deliberately so. The fluorescent bulbs overhead flickered, casting long, jittery shadows that danced like nervous spirits. He could hear the muffled murmur of the crowd beyond the curtain, the curious, the loyal, the lost souls who sought refuge in this subterranean den of laughter and chaos. He took a deep breath, the kind that did little to soothe but everything to steady. Tonight was different. Tonight he wasn't just here to perform. No, Eddie had come to a decision. For years, the word bomb had been a curse, an indictment of failure, a symbol of his downfall. But here, in this peculiar club where reality bent with every joke, bombing was his weapon, his gift, his curse-turned power. He whispered to himself, a mantra laced with bitter irony, fail big or go home. The thought made him smirk despite the trimmer in his hands. The curtain parted with a whispered sigh, revealing Eddie to the expectant crowd. He felt their gaze like a spotlight of scrutiny, the weight of every eye a palpable pressure. He launched into his set, delivering punchlines that were intentionally clumsy, awkward, and spectacularly bad. The silence that followed each joke was thick, heavier than usual, but Eddie welcomed it. He sank into the rhythm of failure, each flop a stroke on the canvas of absurdity. As his jokes fell flat, the club began to ripple and warp subtly. Chairs stretched like melting clocks, their wooden legs elongating and twisting with a surreal grace. The walls shimmered in impossible hues, shifting from bruised purples to neon greens in the blink of an eye. Audience members blinked, their faces contorting between confusion, amusement, and a sort of bewildered reverence. Eddie caught sight of Lola Sparks, her eyes sparkling with mischief and approval from the side stage. She gave him a sly nod, a silent cheer for his embrace of the absurd. The sensation was intoxicating and terrifying. Eddie felt as though he were a conductor of chaos, each failed joke a note in a symphony of disorder. Yet beneath the pandemonium, there was a strange harmony, an underlying balance that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the club itself. After the set, the crowd's applause was hesitant but genuine, a mixture of bewilderment and awe. Eddie stumbled off stage, cheeks flushed and heart pounding. In the dim light of the club's back room, Moss appeared, his bowler hat cocked at a rakish angle and a perpetually raised eyebrow that spoke volumes. Balance, Moss intoned cryptically, is not found in control, but in the dance between order and chaos. You've chosen your steps well, Eddie. But beware the music you summon. Eddie blinked, absorbing the riddle. The club seemed to hum around him, alive with possibility and peril. He was no longer just a failed comedian. He was the keeper of a strange and dangerous magic, wielding failure as a weapon. As he looked around at the warped furniture, the shifting colors, and the faces of the performers, who now regarded him with a mix of respect and wary curiosity, Eddie felt a dark seed of hope take root. Maybe failure wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning. With a wary but genuine smile, Eddie Malone stepped further into the madness, ready to bomb with purpose and reshape a world that had long forgotten him. But as the laughter echoed and the club's reality twisted anew, one question lingered in the charged air: could he control the chaos without losing himself in the process? The night was far from over, and the laughter cabinet was waiting for its next act. The laughter cabinet had never felt quite like this before. As I stepped onto the stage, the familiar buzz of the underground crowd greeted me like a half-remembered dream, hazy but charged with electricity. The spotlight, usually a steady orb of light, began to pulse softly, syncing with the erratic beat of my heart. I swallowed hard, feeling the old familiar knot of anxiety tighten in my gut. Yet there was something different in the air tonight, something unspoken, a kind of invitation to madness. I cleared my throat and launched into my first joke, an awkward self-deprecating quip about how my career had become a series of spectacular failures. each one more embarrassing than the last. The words hung in the air for a moment before the club responded, but not as it usually did. The walls seemed to ripple like a funhouse mirror, bending and twisting, the very fabric of the room dancing in time with my floundering punchline. The audience's laughter was a strange, echoing sound, as if layered with multiple timelines folding in on themselves. Behind the scenes, Lola was watching me with that sharp, knowing look she always had. Her brightly dyed hair caught the flickering lights as she leaned toward me, whispering jokes layered with double meanings and inside knowledge of this surreal place. Our whispered banter caused the backstage walls themselves to shimmer and shift, graffiti-like laughter and shadow dancing across the surfaces in sync with our words. It was a secret language, one that made the chaos feel like home. Not everyone was amused. From the darkened corners of the club, Victor Crane observed our unfolding spectacle. His cold, calculating gaze was fixed on me, his perfectly tailored suit bending and straightening unnaturally, as if resisting the club's growing instability. His smirk deepened part amusement, part warning. Victor's presence was a reminder that beneath the absurdity lay a dangerous game of control and rebellion. Just when the club felt like it might tear itself apart, Moss appeared, as enigmatic as ever. His bowler hat cast a crooked shadow over his face, and his eyes twinkled with mischief and wisdom. With a voice like a riddle wrapped in a joke, he spoke words that sent the audience's laughter echoing backward, bending time itself within the walls of the club. His presence grounded the madness, a cryptic reminder that there were rules even to chaos. The night unfolded as a surreal playground of meta-humor, with performers weaving reality, bending punchlines that commented not just on the show, but on the very nature of existence and performance. Each joke twisted the club's reality further. Chairs floated, lighting flickered into bizarre shapes, and the air buzzed with an electric sense of possibility. We weren't just performing comedy. We were rewriting the code of this strange underworld with every laugh, every groan, every failed punchline. I found myself embracing the bombing, the failure that once haunted me, now a source of unfathomable power. The paradox was deliciously absurd. My most disastrous jokes were the ones that held the key to reshaping worlds. Yet with every warped moment of hilarity, I felt Victor's shadow looming, his desire for order and control clashing violently with our chaotic rebellion. Backstage, Jinx lurked with a sly grin, his mischievous eyes darting between us, his attempts to sabotage somehow adding another layer of unpredictable magic to the chaos. Silas, the quiet sound technician, manipulated the club's technology with subtle, almost invisible gestures, amplifying or dampening the reality shifts with a sorcerer's touch. The boundary between performer and performance blurred utterly. We were no longer simply telling jokes. We were living them, embodying the very absurdity we sought to unleash. Each meta joke was a thread in a tangled tapestry of laughter and chaos, a dance on the razor's edge between creation and destruction. As the night reached its crescendo, the club itself seemed to hold its breath, caught between the exhilarating freedom of absurdity and the looming threat of collapse. And in that suspended moment, I realized the stakes had never been higher. How far could I push this power before the joke ended, before the world outside caught up and demanded a punchline of its own? The laughter cabinet was no longer just a stage. It was a battleground, a crucible where failure became strength, and humor held the fate of reality. And I was at its center, armed with nothing but my bombing and an ironic smile. "All right," I muttered to the empty room as the spotlight pulsed again. "Let's see how deep the rabbit hole goes." Victor Crane's entrance into the main room was less a step and more an incursion. The faint murmur of the crowd dimmed as polished shoes clicked sharply on the scuffed wooden floor, slicing through the atmosphere with surgical precision. His tall frame, clad in a perfectly tailored suit, cast a long shadow against the flickering neon lights of the laughter cabinet. The club, usually a sanctuary of unpredictable laughter and surreal performances, felt suddenly smaller. more constricted as if the walls themselves were bracing for the storm he carried in his smirk. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victor began, his voice cool and unwavering, "the era of chaotic whimsy must end. Order must be restored. The Laughter Cabinet, as fascinating as its madness, needs direction, and I am here to provide it." A ripple of uneasy murmurs spread through the crowd. Eddie, standing near the back with his trademark ironic smile tinged by a flicker of apprehension, felt the familiar churn of anxiety in his gut. This was no mere power play. It was a calculated strike aimed at the heart of everything the club represented. Lola Sparks sidled up beside him, her bright hair catching the neon as she leaned in close. "He's playing for keeps," she whispered, eyes sharp. "And he's got the muscle to back it up." Eddie nodded, hands twitching with the need to act but unsure of how. The club's chaotic magic, the very essence that made bombing a source of power, was now under siege. Backstage, the mood was a flurry of urgent energy. Eddie and Lola gathered a small group of allies, Moss with his cryptic riddles, Silas, the quietly magical sound technician, Carla, the steady bartender with an encyclopedic knowledge of the club's lore, and even Jinx, the scrappy rival whose antics were as unpredictable as the club itself. They huddled around a battered chalkboard, covered in scrawled diagrams mixing joke setups with arcane symbols. Lola tapped a finger against the board. "Victor wants control, but he doesn't understand the club. He thinks order will fix everything. But the club thrives on chaos, on the unexpected." Eddie's eyes flickered with a spark of defiance. "Then we'll give him chaos, on our terms." Their plan was as absurd as the club itself, a coordinated series of comedic disruptions designed to destabilize Victor's enforcers and preserve the club's surreal spirit. Jinx volunteered eagerly, already plotting a slapstick sabotage. The night of Victor's first enforced performance arrived. As Victor took the stage with his loyalists in tow, the club held its breath. Suddenly, from the wings, Jinx unleashed a swarm of improvised rubber chickens. The room exploded with unexpected laughter as the squeaky toys bounced across the stage, sending Victor's carefully choreographed routine into disarray. The laughter was not just noise, it was a ripple, a subtle warping of reality that briefly bent the club's fabric. Victor's enforcers faltered, caught off guard by the bizarre surge of joy and absurdity. Meanwhile, Silas worked his magic behind the scenes. Adjusting the soundboard, he wove an undercurrent of mystical frequencies into the ambient noise, stabilizing the club's reality just enough to prevent it from fracturing under the strain of chaos and control. His quiet focus was the invisible thread holding their rebellion together. Amid the swirling chaos, Eddie stepped forward. His bombing power, once a source of self-doubt, now felt like a weapon forged in the fires of failure. He delivered a series of deliberately failed jokes, each one a calculated strike that distorted reality, confusing Victor's grip and empowering the club's defenders. The confrontation was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, Eddie felt the surge of possibility. The fight for the Laughter Cabinet was no longer just about survival, it was about reclaiming the magic of failure, the dangerous wit that made the club a place where laughter and chaos danced on the edge of reality. As the night wore on, the club buzzed with a renewed energy, electric, unpredictable, and defiantly alive. Victor's gambit had been met with resistance, and the stage was set for a battle where punchlines were weapons and the stakes were nothing less than the soul of the club. And somewhere in the shadows, Moss smiled beneath his bowler hat, his raised eyebrow hinting at riddles yet to be solved. The laughter was coming apart. It started as a faint tremor beneath the floorboards, a subtle vibration that tickled the soles of my shoes and whispered of instability. But within moments, the very walls of the Laughter Cabinet began to ripple and shimmer like the surface of a disturbed pond. The air thickened with the scent of burnt rubber and stale popcorn, underscored by an eerie symphony of fractured echoes, some laughter, some screams, all jumbled into a discordant melody that threatened to unspool the night. I stood at center stage, the spotlight a harsh, unforgiving eye that burned into my wary face. My hands trembled, not from cold, but from the weight of the moment, the palpable tension hanging between chaos and order, balanced on the edge of my faltering confidence. Behind me, surreal shadows flickered and warped, dancing unpredictably with every failed joke I dared to utter. Each misstep bent reality further, twisting the familiar into the absurd, while the audience blurred into a shifting mosaic of faces, some smiling, some frowning, some morphing into shapes I couldn't name. "Come on, Eddie," I muttered to myself, voice barely a whisper. "You've bombed your way to glory before. You can do it again." Lola Sparks appeared at the edge of the stage, her brightly dyed hair a fiery halo against the flickering neon lights. Her eyes, sharp and rebellious, burned with a fierce determination that contrasted starkly with my own faltering resolve. "You re-slipping," she said, voice low but urgent. "The balance is breaking, and if you don't pull it back, this whole place is going to unravel." Before I could reply, a cold presence loomed in the shadows near the backstage corridors. Victor Crane emerged, his tall frame sharply dressed, the calculating smirk never leaving his lips. His gaze was a knife, cold and unyielding, slicing through the layers of chaos like a surgeon's scalpel. "Fascinating," he murmured, voice smooth as silk but laced with menace. "The club's fabric is fraying, yet you cling to your illusions of control." Lola stepped forward, her stance defiant. "You want order, you want control, you'll kill the magic that makes this place alive." Victor's smirk deepened. "Magic is a tool, nothing more, and I intend to wield it properly." Meanwhile, in the dim corner near the bar, Moss watched the unfolding drama with a raised eyebrow beneath his bowler hat. His voice, when it came, was a cryptic riddle that seemed to echo through the shifting air. "Balance is a dance on a blade's edge," he intoned. "Step too far to one side, and the whole stage falls into darkness." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words settle like lead in my chest. The club's reality was not just a backdrop, it was a living, breathing entity, fragile and volatile. And I was the reluctant maestro, conducting a symphony of chaos with trembling hands. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to focus, to channel the strange power that my bombing bestowed upon me. Each failed joke was a thread I wove into the fabric of reality. But tonight, my threads were fraying, unraveling faster than I could stitch them back. "Okay," I said aloud, voice steadier than I felt. "Let's try this again." The words stumbled out, awkward and clumsy, but with each one, the shadows shifted, the ripples in the walls pulsed, and the discordant laughter twisted into something almost harmonious. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was a start. Lola's eyes shone with grudging admiration. "You re-holding it together, Eddie." "For now." But this isn't just about jokes anymore. It's about who controls the punchline. Victor's gaze locked onto mine, sharp and unwavering, and I intend to write the final act. As the club's reality pulsed with unstable energy, I felt my deepest fears rise like a tide within me, the fear of failure, of losing control, of fading into irrelevance. But beneath the dread, a stubborn ember of hope flickered. Maybe, just maybe, failure was not the end, but a beginning. The laughter was coming apart, yes, but so was I. And in that unraveling, perhaps we would find a new pattern, one stitched from absurdity, resilience, and the dangerous power of bombing. The balance was tilting. And the next move was mine. The spotlight dimmed slightly, as if the club itself was holding its breath. Somewhere in the distance, a clock ticked, each second a pulse in the heart of the madness. The stage was set, the players in motion, and the joke, as always, was on me. The backstage hallway of the laughter cabinet stretched long and shadowed, a labyrinth of dim lights and peeling posters from forgotten shows. Eddie Malone shuffled forward, each step heavy with a mixture of dread and determination. Ahead, the antique mirror loomed, its ornate frame scratched and warped, as if it had absorbed the laughter and despair of countless performers before him. But this was no ordinary mirror. It was said to reveal more than mere reflections. It showed truths, memories, and sometimes the ghosts we most feared to face. Eddie stopped before it, the glass rippling like a disturbed pond. His breath caught as the surface shimmered and then resolved not into his wary, disheveled self, but into a scene that stabbed at his memory with merciless precision. The televised meltdown that had shattered his career years ago. The room around him seemed to fade, replaced by the harsh glare of stage lights and the cold faces of a jeering audience. The younger Eddie stood at the microphone, hands trembling, trying to force jokes that fell flat, his voice cracking under the weight of expectation and personal despair. The laughter was cruel, a sharp cacophony that echoed in the chamber of his mind. Every failed punchline, every awkward pause was magnified and twisted, warping into a surreal nightmare where the audience's faces melted into monstrous grins. A sudden voice cut through the oppressive silence. Moss appeared beside him, as if stepping out from the shadows themselves. His bowler hat was tilted at a rakish angle, and his ever-raised eyebrow gave him an air of bemused wisdom. "Mirrors," Moss said softly, "don't just show what's on the surface. They hold the cracks, the fractures of our souls. Here, you'll see what you need, not what you want." Eddie swallowed hard, his gaze locked on the unfolding scene. Memories flooded in how the laughter had felt like a blade, slicing through his confidence. How the cameras had captured not triumph, but unraveling. He felt the old shame, the bitter taste of failure that had haunted him for years. Yet, as he watched, the distortion shifted. The monstrous grins softened, the faces blurred into shapes not quite human, but not entirely hostile either. The laughter changed tone from mockery to something more complicated, a strange mixture of empathy and chaos. The club's magic was bleeding into the memory, twisting it, reshaping it. "Why show me this?" Eddie whispered, voice trembling. Moss smiled faintly. "Because you must own it. The failure, the pain, it's your power. The more you resist, the more it controls you." Eddie's hand trembled as he reached out, fingers brushing the glass. The surface was cool, then suddenly warm, as if alive. The vision inside shifted again, this time showing his present self, flawed, wary, but standing firm. The mirror no longer rippled with chaos, but reflected back the ironic smile he had come to wear as armor. In that moment, Eddie felt a release, a quiet triumph blossoming in his chest. He was not the broken man from the past, but a man who had learned to wield his failures, to turn them into something unpredictable and powerful. The mirror's surface stilled, and for the first time in a long while, Eddie saw not just his reflection, but his truth. As he stepped back, the hallway's shadows seemed less oppressive, the weight on his shoulders lighter. Moss's cryptic words echoed in his mind, a riddle half solved: to embrace the absurdity, to laugh at the chaos within, and to find strength in the cracks. Outside, somewhere in the club's depths, the faint sound of laughter rippled wild, uncertain, and full of possibility. Eddie knew the battles ahead would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. But for now, in this quiet moment of reflection, he had taken a crucial step toward accepting himself and the strange power that failure granted him. The mirror had shown him his past. Now it was time to face his future. And as Eddie turned away, a new resolve settled in his chest, ready to carry him into the chaos that awaited, armed with the paradoxical weapon of his own imperfection. The backstage room was a cluttered sanctuary, filled with the scent of stale beer, old cigarette smoke, and the faint metallic tang of something unplaceable, the kind of place where reality felt just a little looser than outside. Eddie Malone sat slouched on a battered couch, nursing a lukewarm coffee, his ironic smile fleeting as he contemplated the mounting pressure closing in around the laughter cabinet. He wasn't alone for long. The door burst open with a clatter, and Lola Sparks stormed in, her brightly dyed hair practically glowing under the flickering neon sign hanging above the bar. "We don't have time to sit around feeling sorry for ourselves," Lola declared, pacing with fiery urgency. "Victor's pulling every string he has, and if we don't act, this place won't just change, it'll be erased." Her voice was sharp but carried an undercurrent of fierce loyalty that made Eddie sit up a little straighter. "We need a plan, a real one, and we need allies." Eddie raised an eyebrow, his mind racing with self-deprecating jokes about how his allies usually ended up abandoning him faster than a punchline bombing on opening night. But Lola's gaze was unwavering, a challenge wrapped in rebellion. Before Eddie could respond, the room shifted as Moss entered. The older man, with his perpetually raised eyebrow and bowler hat slightly askew, leaned heavily on his cane. His voice when he spoke was low and gravelly, weaving riddles that hung in the air like smoke rings. "Chaos is but a dance of shadows and light," Moss intoned cryptically. To stand firm in the laughter, one must first embrace the silence between the jokes. The group exchanged glances, some amused, some confused. But all understanding that Moss's riddles were not mere nonsense, they were keys to navigating the club's surreal power. Just then, a soft hum of machinery and a faint pulse of light drew their attention to the back corner where Silas worked. The sound technician's lean figure was half hidden behind an array of soundboards and glowing cables. His fingers flew over controls that seemed ordinary at first, but soon revealed subtle pulses of energy weaving through the room. "I've been tweaking the tech," Silas said, eyes sparkling with quiet excitement. "The club's reality isn't just bending on its own. I can nudge it, control the shifts, amplify the effects, maybe even keep Victor's chaos at bay." Eddie nodded, the pieces of their scattered resistance beginning to form a coherent picture. The last to join was Jinx. The young performer entered with hesitant steps, her nervous energy almost tangible. Despite their fraught history rivalry tempered by mutual respect, her sly grin hinted at a readiness to stand with Eddie. "I'm in," she said, voice low but steady. "Victor's rules aren't mine, and if bombing can break reality, maybe it can break his control too." Together, the group gathered around a makeshift table, cluttered with hastily scribbled notes, half-empty beer bottles, and the occasional prop from the stage. Plans were drawn, jokes were written, and strategies formed, each idea wilder than the last, but grounded in the shared understanding that failure wasn't just inevitable. It was their greatest weapon. Eddie felt a flicker of something long buried beneath his insecurities, hope. The chaotic magic of the laughter cabinet wasn't just a curse or a burden. It was a force that could be wielded, shaped by the laughter and loyalty of an unlikely family. As the night deepened and the club's neon lights hummed softly, Eddie looked around at his new allies, rebels, eccentrics, and misfits all, and realized that this was the beginning of something far bigger than any one joke or set. With a wry smile, he muttered to himself, maybe bombing's not so bad after all. And just like that, the balance between chaos and order shifted ever so slightly, setting the stage for the battles yet to come. But beneath the laughter, the shadows of doubt and danger still lurked, reminding Eddie that the fight for the laughter cabinet's soul was far from over. The question wasn't if they could stand together, it was whether they could survive the madness that lay ahead. And as the first hints of dawn crept through the cracked windows, Eddie knew with a mix of dread and exhilaration that the next act was about to begin. The edge of laughter, there was a certain poetry in failure. Eddie Malone had stumbled upon it unbidden, like a punchline whispered in a dream too strange to forget. The club, the laughter cabinet, pulsed around him, a living entity shaped by the chaos of his bombing. Tonight, he stood on the dim stage, the spotlight a harsh, solitary beacon that felt less like illumination and more like a spotlight under a microscope. He could almost hear the universe holding its breath, waiting to see what would break first, the club or Eddie himself. He cleared his throat, fingers trembling slightly as he grasped the microphone. "Why don't scientists trust atoms?" He began, voice low and cracking under the weight of expectation and self-loathing. A pause, pregnant with the anticipation of a punchline that had long since lost its charm. "Because they make up everything." The joke landed with a thud, no laughter, just an eerie silence punctuated by the faintest ripple in the air. Eddie's eyes darted across the room as the edges of reality began to blur. Chairs in the front row shimmered, their wooden legs folding and unfolding like origami, morphing into delicate paper cranes that fluttered away before his very eyes. A glass of water on the bar rippled, then condensed into a bright orb of light, hovering midair before dissolving into tiny sparks. From the wings, Lola Sparks' sharp gaze never wavered. Her brightly dyed hair framed a face that balanced skepticism and awe, a living contradiction much like the club itself. She whispered under her breath, "You're re-pushing it, Eddie. This isn't just a joke anymore. It's a cosmic punchline." Eddie swallowed the lump in his throat. "What if I bomb so hard I break the punchline?" He muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Behind the scenes, Moss leaned heavily on his cane, the bowler hat casting a shadow over his keen eyes. His voice was a rasp dry as old leaves. "Comedic chaos, when untethered, is a terrible thing," he said, half to himself, half to the room. "It's like juggling knives made of rubber bands, fun until one snaps, and then you, left bleeding laughter." Silas, hunched at the soundboard, fingers dancing over dials and sliders, added a faint electronic warble that seemed to warp the very air. His magic was subtle but potent, bending the club's reality with a deft touch that made the impossible seem like an everyday trick. Eddie's next joke was a deliberate disaster. Why did the chicken cross the envious strip? He shouted into the microphone, voice cracking and raw. "To get to the same side?" The club shuddered. Walls breathed, colors bleeding into each other like wet paint on canvas. The audience's faces twisted and stretched, expressions flickering between laughter, confusion, and terror. The boundary between performer and spectator blurred. Laughter rippled like a living thing, wild and untamed, threatening to tear the fragile fabric of the club apart. Lola's voice cut through the chaos.
Eddie!
"Stop. You're not just bombing, you're destabilizing the whole place." He grinned, ironically, the tired smile of a man who'd learned to find hope in his failures. "Maybe it's time the joke bombed the joke," he said, voice trembling with reckless daring. But Moss was already moving, whispering riddles about balance and the thin line between creation and destruction. Silas twisted knobs, trying to anchor the club's reality before it spiraled completely out of control. The night stretched on, a surreal dance of cosmic punchlines and twisted realities. Eddie pushed further, each failed joker hammer against the walls of convention, each bomb a spark setting the stage for a new kind of performance. The club became a playground of absurdity, a place where the impossible bent and bowed to the power of laughter and its darker twin, chaos. And as the last echoes of his bombing faded into the night, Eddie felt something shift deep within him. The edge of laughter was a precipice, and he was teetering on it, ready to fall or fly. But one thing was certain: the world, and the laughter cabinet, would never be the same again. The question hung in the air, heavy and electric. How far could he push the joke before the laughter turned to silence? The laughter cabinet throbbed with a surreal pulse that night, a heartbeat caught between laughter and menace, as Eddie Malone stepped into the dim spotlight. The crowd's murmurs mingled with the faint scent of stale beer and sweat, their faces a kaleidoscope of anticipation and unease. Somewhere beyond the flickering stage lights, the walls themselves seemed to breathe, shadows stretching and contracting like the breaths of some sleeping beast. Eddie's gaze swept over the audience, but his real focus was the figure that had just entered the room, the cold silhouette of Victor Crane. Victor stood tall and impossibly composed, his sharply tailored suit an anachronism amid the club's haphazard decor. His eyes, icy and calculating, locked onto Eddie with a ferocity that made the air around him seem to chill. The smirk curling on Victor's lips was a constant reminder of the power he sought to seize, a power that could either order the chaotic heart of the laughter cabinet or snuff it out entirely. So Victor's voice cut through the ambient buzz like a razor. The washed-up jester thinks he can play with forces beyond his understanding. Eddie swallowed his nerves, the familiar sting of self-doubt gnawing at him. but beneath it, a flicker of resolve sparked. This was the moment he had been spiraling toward, the moment where failure might finally mean something more. He stepped forward, the stage creaking underfoot, and faced the expectant crowd. Then, with a wry, ironic smile, he launched into his first joke, a deliberately bad, clumsy setup that fell flat in the most spectacular way. The silence was immediate and profound, a vacuum of expectation, and then the magic happened. Props on the stage began to warp and twist, defying physics. A microphone stand melted into a writhing serpent of tangled cords. The spotlight flickered, shifting hues from harsh white to a dizzying spectrum. Audience members blinked, their faces distorting like reflections in a funhouse mirror, laughter mixing with confusion in an uneasy symphony. Victor's eyes narrowed. He stepped onto the stage, his tone icy but laced with mockery. Chaos is amusing, Malone, but ultimately it's a game for children. Order is where true power lies. With a sharp, measured wit, Victor unleashed his own set of punchlines, each precise, cutting, designed to impose structure rather than topple it. The club's reality responded accordingly. The warped stage began to straighten, colors sharpened into harsh clarity, and the once fluid air grew taut and brittle, like a glass bubble stretched to its breaking point. The battle was on. Eddie's mind raced. Every failed joke was a calculated strike, a ripple sent through the fabric of the club's reality. He felt the exhilarating chaos swell under his skin, a dangerous but intoxicating power. Victor, with his cold precision, pushed back relentlessly, attempting to cage the wildness with his ironclad order. Their duel was less performance and more cosmic dance, meta jokes and layered punchlines dancing on the edge of absurdity and menace. The club responded in kind, its walls cracking and shimmering, lights fracturing into kaleidoscopic patterns that dazzled and disoriented simultaneously. At one point, Eddie's ironic smile met Victor's unyielding smirk in a silent wager, a clash of philosophies embodied in two men who had both tasted failure but chosen vastly different paths. The audience, caught in the maelstrom, felt the tension ripple through their bones. Some laughed nervously, others gasped as reality twisted around them. The line between performance and existence blurred dangerously. Lola, Moss, Silas, and even the reluctant Jinx watched from the shadows, their faces a mix of hope and fear. The outcome of this showdown would decide not just the fate of the laughter cabinet, but the very nature of the chaotic magic it held. In that charged moment, Eddie realized that this was no longer just about comedy or control. It was about embracing the unpredictable, the imperfect, the glorious failure that could reshape worlds. And so, with a deep breath and a heart pounding with paradoxical hope, Eddie prepared to bomb like never before, because in failure, he had found his greatest strength. The showdown had begun, and the laughter was about to change everything. The air was thick with tension, charged like the moment before a punchline lands or bombs spectacularly. Eddie Malone stood under the jaundiced glow of the stage lights in the laughter cabinet, the underground club that was less a venue and more a vortex of chaotic energy. Tonight wasn't just a set, it was a battleground. Victor Crane watched from the shadows, his sharp suit almost gleaming in the club's minimal light, a smirk playing at the edges of his lips. His gaze was cold, calculating, the kind of stare that could freeze laughter mid-gasp. He had made his move, and now it was time for Eddie to respond. Eddie squared his shoulders, the usual self-doubt momentarily drowned by a surge of reckless determination. He cleared his throat and launched into his opening joke, a deliberately awful, painfully awkward gag about a platypus running for president. The audience's reaction was immediate and visceral, faces contorted, jaws dropped, and the room's fabric began to ripple as if reality itself was hiccuping. Walls shimmered and bent like heat waves, colors bled in impossible gradients, and the crowd's expressions morphed into grotesque caricatures of shock and amusement. The club did not just hear the joke, it felt it, responded to it in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. Victor's lips curled into a sharper smirk. He stepped forward, his voice slicing through the surreal haze with a punchline meticulously crafted to cut. Why did the chicken cross the road? To escape the chaos you so desperately cling to, the air around him froze, laughter strangled into an eerie silence. Shadows stretched with unnatural length across the floor, creeping like dark fingers attempting to reclaim order. It was a battle of wills, chaos against control, absurdity against precision. Lola Sparks was a streak of color and energy amidst the turmoil. Her brightly dyed hair flashed as she maneuvered through the shifting landscape of warped reality, rallying the performers who had gathered like a ragtag army. Their voices rose in a chorus of meta jokes and improvised quips, weaving together a tapestry of defiance that pulsed with raw creative power. "You think you can cage the laughter?" Lola shouted, eyes gleaming. "This club is chaos incarnate." Each joke from Eddie and his allies sent ripples through the club's fabric. Timelines flickered, objects morphed, and the very air shimmered with possibility. The audience, now participants in this surreal performance, erupted in laughter that was both genuine and unnervingly otherworldly. Victor responded with measured precision, his retorts like calculated chess moves, each designed to tighten his grip on the club's reality. Yet the more he tried to impose order, the more the club resisted, a living organism fueled by the unpredictable power of bombing comedy. The climax of their duel was a dizzying volley of meta jokes, each layer peeling back the illusion of reality and performance. Eddie cracked a line about the absurdity of being a has-been who only succeeds in failure, twisting the concept until it became a weapon. Victor parried with a dark quip about the futility of rebellion beneath the weight of control. Suddenly, the ceiling above them cracked, a fracture that spread like a spiderweb, flooding the room with a kaleidoscope of shifting colors and laughter that echoed beyond the physical bounds of the club. Reality bent and swayed, a wild dance choreographed by the chaotic symphony of their words. In that moment, Eddie realized the true extent of his power. His failures were not weaknesses, they were forces of creation and destruction, a paradox that made him both vulnerable and invincible. The club was alive, breathing in the laughter and chaos, and he was its heart. Victor's smirk faltered, shadowed by the dawning understanding that control was slipping through his fingers like smoke. The battle was far from over, but the tide had shifted. As the laughter crescendoed, Eddie's voice rang out one last time, a punchline that blurred the lines between joke and reality. "If bombing is the art of failure, then consider this my masterpiece." The crowd erupted, the club pulsing with a wild, uncontainable energy. The fight had become a dance, a chaotic, hilarious, dangerous ballet of words and worlds, and Eddie Malone was leading. But as the echoes of laughter faded into the charged silence that followed, one question lingered in the air. Could he keep this fragile balance? Or would the next joke be the one that shatters everything? The stage was set, the players in motion, and the punchlines were ready to fly. The laughter cabinet was cracking. No, not in the metaphorical sense, though Eddie had learned to live with plenty of those, but quite literally. The walls, once solid brick and plaster adorned with faded posters of past performers, now shimmered in impossible hues, fracturing like glass under the pressure of some unseen force. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through the floor and rattling the mismatched chairs scattered about the dimly lit space. Eddie stood amid the chaos, his breath shallow, eyes darting from one rippling fissure to another. "This isn't good," Lola said, her voice sharp against the unsettling backdrop. She tugged at her brightly dyed hair, her normally fierce eyes betraying a flicker of panic. "We were tearing the place apart." Eddie's ironic smile was gone, replaced by a grim line. "I know. Every time I bomb, it's like the club breathes in a little too hard and starts to break down. I thought I had a handle on this, the power, the chaos, but it's like holding water with a sieve." The floor beneath them quivered, and a crack slithered across the surface, glowing faintly with a spectral blue light. It spread quickly, as if reality itself was peeling back. Eddie stepped back, hand brushing against the cracked wall that whispered of other dimensions, somewhere absurd, somewhere terrifying. He had seen glimpses before, a clown juggling planets, an audience of faceless shadows, a punchline so sharp it cut through time. Victor's been pushing too hard, Lola muttered. His control games, trying to lock down the club's magic, it's destabilizing everything. Eddie's mind raced. Victor Crane, the tall, sharp-suited impresario with that cold, calculating smirk, had always been an ominous presence. But now his influence was literally fracturing their world. Eddie imagined Victor prowling the cracked corridors like a dark conductor, orchestrating the breakdown for his own gain. A sudden, chilling laugh echoed through the club, and Eddie turned to see Victor emerge from the shadows, hands clasped behind his back, eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. "Ah, Eddie," he said smoothly, "I see the cracks have begun to show. Quite fitting, don't you think? The old order breaking down, the chaos bubbling to the surface." Eddie clenched his fists. "You remaking it worse. This place won't hold if you keep pushing." Victor's smirk deepened. "Control isn't about holding on tightly, my friend. It's about knowing when to let go and when to squeeze." Before Eddie could respond, a sudden pulse rippled through the club. The air thickened, warping sounds into twisted echoes. A chandelier bent and stretched like taffy before snapping back. The audience seats folded inward, the wood grain swirling into faces that whispered strange jokes in tongues Eddie didn't understand. Lola grabbed Eddie's arm. "We need help. Now." From the back room came the steady thrum of machinery and softly modulated tones. Silas, the unassuming sound technician, was at his post, fingers dancing over the controls. The lights dimmed, and a subtle frequency filled the room, a gentle hum imbued with quiet magic. The cracks in the walls pulsed in response, flickering like candles in a storm. Nearby, Moss leaned on his cane, his bowler hat tilted just so, a perpetually raised eyebrow conveying a world of cryptic meaning. "Balance is a delicate dance," he intoned, voice thick with riddles. "You cannot fight chaos with control, nor control with chaos. You must find the rhythm between the two." Eddie nodded, swallowing his dread. "Then what do we do?" Moss smiled knowingly, the lines around his eyes deepening. "You already hold the key. Failure is your weapon, but it must be wielded with purpose. Bomb not to break, but to rebuild." The idea seemed absurd, yet in this place of warped realities and dangerous comedy, absurdity was the only truth. Eddie took a deep breath and stepped toward the nearest crack. He whispered to himself, a line of self-deprecating humor laced with determination. "Well, here goes nothing." As he spoke, the crack shimmered, the sharp edges softening, the spectral blue light fading to a warm amber glow. The club exhaled, the walls settling, the ripples smoothing. Eddie felt a surge of cautious hope. This was only the beginning of fragile truce between order and chaos, comedy and catastrophe. But even as the club breathed easier, Eddie knew the fractures would return. Victor would not relent, and the battle for the laughter cabinet's soul was far from over. Yet, for the first time in a long while, Eddie felt ready. Ready to bomb with purpose, to wield failure as a strange sort of power, and to keep the cracks from consuming them all. The night hummed with possibilities, and the laughter dark, absurd, dangerous was far from over. The lights had dimmed to a soft, almost tender glow, and the usual buzz of the laughter cabinet had thinned to a hush. The crowd had long since dispersed, leaving Eddie Malone alone on the stage. The very heart of the club that was now as much a part of him as his own shadow. He sat on the edge of the worn wooden platform, the grain rough beneath his fingers, reflecting the countless nights of laughter and silence, of triumph and failure. Above him, the neon sign flickered faintly, a crooked grin in electric pink, mocking and comforting all at once. For a moment, Eddie allowed himself to simply be. No rehearsed jokes, no frantic rewrites, no desperate attempts to grasp the spotlight. Just the quiet company of an empty room that had seen too much of his worst and best. He let out a breath, uneven and heavy, the kind that carries the weight of years and mistakes. Funny, isn't it? He muttered to the empty seats, voice low and laced with irony. The one place where failing is your greatest power. And yet, it's the loneliest stage you will ever stand on. The silence seemed to answer in kind, stretching and folding around him like a thick velvet curtain. It was a loneliness born not of absence, but of necessity, a solitude carved out by the strange gift that only he possessed. The power to alter reality by bombing, to remake the world with failed punchlines and awkward pauses. It was a paradox that gnawed at him, a joke with no audience. Footsteps echoed softly from the wings, and Eddie's head snapped up. Lola Sparks emerged from the shadows, her bright hair a beacon in the dimness, her eyes sharp and alive. She didn't interrupt his reverie. Instead, she settled beside him, close enough to be a presence without forcing conversation. "You know," she said after a moment, voice low and steady, "this place. It listens, not just to the laughter, but to the silences too." Eddie gave a tired smile, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, and sometimes it's the silences that scream the loudest." Lola nudged him gently. "You don't have to carry it all alone." He shook his head, a wry chuckle escaping. "That's the catch, isn't it? I'm the keeper. The one who bombs so the joke can live. But in doing so, I'm stuck in a punchline that never ends." From the dim backstage, a familiar figure appeared, Moss, the enigmatic gatekeeper of the laughter cabinet. His bowler hat was tipped at a rakish angle, and his raised eyebrow seemed permanently etched with both amusement and sorrow. "Loneliness," Moss intoned, his voice a riddle wrapped in a joke, "is the punchline only the comedian hears. Yet, it is also the stage upon which the truest acts are performed." Eddie regarded him silently, the cryptic words settling like dust before a storm. Moss's presence was a reminder of the delicate balance they guarded, a chaos too wild for order, an order too cold for laughter. Alone again, Eddie's mind drifted backward to that televised meltdown that had shattered his career and nearly his soul. The memory was sharp, raw, a jagged edge beneath the ironic smile he wore like armor. Yet in that fractured past lay the seed of his power, the failure that birthed the absurd magic of the laughter cabinet. His thoughts spiraled into a surreal dialogue, a conversation between the man he was and the man he feared he would become. The ghosts of failed jokes and lost chances danced in the shadows, whispering truths about fear, hope, and the strange alchemy that turned failure into strength. Maybe Eddie thought the joke isn't just on the world, but on me too. And maybe that's where the real magic lives. The stage around him seemed to breathe, pulsing with a life all its own. The walls wavered faintly, colors shifting like the punchlines of a joke still unfolding. In that moment, Eddie felt the weight of his solitude not as a burden, but as a mantle, a role he was uniquely destined to play. He stood slowly, the creak of the stage a familiar companion. The ironic smile softened, touched with something fragile, a new acceptance. "All right," he whispered to the empty room, "let's see what kind of chaos we can make tonight." And with that, the loneliness was no longer silence. It was a stage set for the next act, a tale of absurdity, resilience, and the dangerous magic of bombing. The lights flickered once more, and somewhere deep within the club, the laughter began to stir anew. But as the echo of his footsteps faded into the shadows, a question lingered unspoken. How long could one man hold the balance between chaos and control before the laughter turned to silence forever? The joke was far from over. The narrow corridor behind the stage was a maze of shadows and flickering neon, the air thick with the scent of stale beer, sweat, and something indefinably electric. Lola Sparks stood still, her brightly dyed hair catching the intermittent glow as if it were on fire, her eyes sharp and unyielding despite the tremble in her hands. She whispered a vow under her breath, words half joking, half solemn, her voice barely audible over the distant murmur of the club. "Not on my watch, Victor, not today." The laughter cabinet had always been a strange place, but tonight the strangeness was tangible, pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the scuffed floorboards. Victor Crane's shadow loomed large not just as a man, but as a force intent on reshaping this sanctuary of chaos into a cold monument of control. Lola knew what was at stake. The club was more than a venue. It was a crucible of absurdity and possibility, and if Victor succeeded, that magic would be snuffed out forever. As she moved deeper into the underground chambers, the walls seemed to hum with anticipation, an almost imperceptible vibration that set her nerves on edge. She wasn't alone. Figures clad in sharp suits, Victor's enforcers, patrolled the passageways, their cold eyes searching for signs of resistance. Lola's breath caught. This was a game of shadows and silence, and one wrong move could mean the end. Ahead, in the heart of the club's arcane core, Victor waited. He stood tall, the sharp lines of his suit almost too perfect, his smirk a frozen mask of calculated menace. The air between them crackled, thick with the unspoken battle of wills. "Lola," he said, voice smooth as silk but laced with venom, "still clinging to your little rebellion. The club belongs to order now." To me, Lola's laugh was a razor's edge. "Order? You mean control? You want to turn this place into a mausoleum for jokes that don't dare to fail? You don't get it, Victor. Chaos is the heart here. Without it, this place dies." Victor's eyes narrowed. "And you think your antics will stop me?" She stepped forward, fearless despite the pounding in her chest. "Watch me." With a swift movement born of years, navigating the club's hidden alcoves, Lola reached a concealed panel embedded in the wall. Fingers trembling but steady, she pressed a sequence of buttons and levers, ancient mechanisms humming to life beneath her touch. The club responded instantly. Lights flickered, the air shimmered, and the very fabric of reality rippled like a disturbed pond. Victor's smug expression faltered as the balance shifted beneath his feet. "What have you done?" "Protected it," Lola said simply, eyes blazing. "You can't cage chaos, Victor, not here." From the shadows, Eddie Malone watched the scene unfold, heart pounding in his chest. The club twisted and warped around Lola's, defiance colors bleeding into each other, shadows dancing with unnatural grace, laughter echoing in warped cadences that blurred the line between amusement and madness. He felt a surge of hope mingled with helplessness. Could they really hold the line? The confrontation escalated, voices rising in a symphony of biting sarcasm and raw emotion. Victor lunged, but the club's shifting reality disoriented him, the very walls seeming to resist his control. Lola's gamble bought time, but at a cost. Exhausted, she faltered, her legs nearly giving out beneath her. Eddie was there in an instant, catching her as she collapsed. The weight of the moment pressed down on them both, exhaustion, relief, fear, and the distant sounds of the club's patrons, gradually returning to their revelry, whispered through the walls like a fragile promise. "You did it," Eddie said quietly, voice thick with emotion. Lola smiled faintly, a warrior's smile edged with pain. "For now, but Victor's not done, not yet." The battle for the laughter cabinet was far from over. Yet in this moment of fragile victory, amidst the flickering lights and surreal echoes of laughter, a new hope glimmered, a hope born not from control, but from the fierce, unyielding spirit of those who dared to embrace the beautiful absurdity of failure. As Lola rested in Eddie's arms, the club's heartbeat steadied, but the coming storm loomed on the horizon, promising that the next act would be the most dangerous yet. And Eddie, with his ironic smile and wary eyes, knew that whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. The last laugh was not yet delivered. The backstage corridor smelled of damp concrete and old paint, but tonight it was electric with tension. Lola's footsteps echoed softly, a steady rhythm in the quiet chaos. She paused, pressing her back against the cool wall, closing her eyes to steady her breath. The faint hum of the club's magic vibrated beneath her skin, a reminder of what was at stake. She thought of Eddie, the man who had stumbled into this strange world and somehow become its reluctant hero. And she thought of Victor Crane, the shadow looming over them all, a man who had once been a comedian but had traded laughter for power. Lola's lips curled into a wry smile. The irony was not lost on her. "Time to make a stand," she whispered. Suddenly, footsteps approached, sharp, purposeful. She slipped into a narrow alcove, heart hammering. Two of Victor's enforcers passed, their eyes scanning the dim light. Lola held her breath, the seconds stretching thin. When they were gone, she moved swiftly, fingers flying over the hidden panel. The ancient mechanisms responded, gears turning, lights flickering, and the air shimmering with renewed energy. The chaotic magic surged, pushing back against the encroaching order. Victor's voice cut through the charged air. "You think you can stop the inevitable?" "I think," Lola said, voice steady, "that the inevitable isn't so inevitable after all." The club trembled, laughter warping into strange new rhythms. The battle lines were drawn, and though the night was far from over, Lola's last stand had given them a fighting chance. And in the shadows, Eddie prepared to step back into the fray, armed not with perfect jokes, but with the power of glorious failure and the strength of unwavering friendship. The laughter cabinet was alive, and the show was far from over. The back room of the laughter cabinet was a sanctuary of shadows and whispers, a place where the club's hidden truths lingered like smoke in the air. Eddie stepped inside, the creak of the old wooden floorboards beneath his feet reverberating softly as he approached the figure waiting by the far wall. Moss, the club's enigmatic gatekeeper, stood leaning on his cane, his bowler hat tipped just so, and a perpetually raised eyebrow framing eyes that gleamed with knowing mischief. "Ah, Eddie," Moss greeted, his voice a dry rasp, "just the man I was hoping to see." Eddie's ironic smile flickered, his wary eyes searching Moss's face for clues. "I'm not sure if I'm ready for whatever you've got planned," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "Readiness is overrated," Moss said, stepping aside to reveal an ancient plaque mounted on the wall. It was carved from polished obsidian, the surface etched with twisting symbols and a riddle that seemed to shift subtly as Eddie's gaze held it. "What is this?" Eddie asked. "A puzzle," Moss replied, "one that holds the key to understanding the delicate balance of this place." Lola Sparks appeared quietly in the doorway, her brightly dyed hair a vivid streak in the dim light. Her sharp eyes studied Eddie with a mix of curiosity and encouragement. "If anyone can solve Moss's riddles, it's you," she said, her voice steady but laced with the tension of the stakes at hand. Eddie stepped closer, the words on the plaque catching his eye. "In Chaos' heart, control must bend. To break the loop, the means, the end. Embrace the joke that's never told, and laugh where nothing can be sold." He frowned, the lines twisting like a cosmic punchline that didn't quite land. His mind raced, trying to untangle the meaning behind the cryptic verse. "So it's about control and chaos. I need to let go. But how can I let go when everything depends on me holding it together?" Moss chuckled softly, the sound like gravel shifting. "Ah, but that's the paradox, isn't it? The tighter you grip, the faster it unravels. The laughter that reshapes reality comes from surrender, not force." Lola stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with fierce loyalty. "You've been trying to fix everything, Eddie, but maybe the club doesn't want fixing. Maybe it wants embracing." Eddie's gaze flicked between the two, the weight of their words settling deep within him. He took a deep breath and spoke the riddle aloud, each word resonating in the cramped room. As he did, the walls seemed to ripple, colors bleeding and blending in kaleidoscopic waves, shapes warping and folding in on themselves. The very fabric of the club's reality shimmered, unstable yet beautiful in its fluidity. "This place," Eddie murmured, "it's alive in a way I never understood." Moss nodded, his smile tinged with pride. "Exactly. It's a dance between order and chaos, and you, Eddie, are the lead." For a long moment, silence reigned, broken only by the subtle hum of shifting reality. Then, unexpectedly, Eddie laughed, a fractured, genuine sound that echoed warmly through the room. It was a laugh born of acceptance, of surrendering to the absurdity that had become his life. The chaotic distortions softened, folding neatly back into the club's walls, which now pulsed with a steady, shimmering energy. The balance was restored, fragile but real. Lola clapped a hand on Eddie's shoulder. "Looks like you cracked it." Or maybe, Eddie said, his smile wry but hopeful, "we cracked ourselves." As the three stood in the quiet aftermath, the club seemed to breathe around them, alive with possibility. Eddie knew this was only the beginning. The riddle was solved, but the journey, the real journey, had just taken a wild, absurd turn. He glanced toward the stage, where the laughter waited, the chaos waiting, the next bomb waiting to reshape the world once more. And this time, he was ready to laugh with it, not against it. "Let's see what kind of joke the universe throws at us next," he said, eyes gleaming with dark hope. The laughter cabinet whispered its approval, a cosmic chuckle that promised more twists, more absurdity, and the endless dance between failure and power. The night was far from over. The faint buzz of the club's sound system was usually just background noise to the usual cacophony of laughter and clinking glasses. Tonight, however, it took on a new significance, a hum that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Silas sat hunched in the cramped sound booth, a nest of wires and knobs sprawled before him like a conductor's orchestra. His fingers moved deftly, coaxing the equipment into an eerie symphony of vibrations and frequencies that shimmered just beyond the range of human hearing. Eddie stood nearby, leaning against the peeling brick wall of the backstage area, watching with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. For weeks, the club had been fraying at the seams, reality twisting and buckling like an old vinyl record stuck in a loop of chaos. The fractures were subtle at first, a prop shifting form mid-scene, a timeline folding back on itself like a MBS strip, but the disruptions had grown more severe, threatening to unravel the fabric of the laughter cabinet entirely. "What are you doing back there?" Eddie called softly, half afraid to disturb the delicate balance Silas was trying to achieve. Silas glanced up, his eyes gleaming with a secret knowledge. "Fixing the mess," he said with a crooked smile, his voice a low rumble beneath the rising hum. "You could say I've been holding back my talents." Eddie blinked. "Talents? You mean like magic?" A slow grin spread across Silas's face. "Something like that." The revelation hit Eddie like a sudden punchline, unexpected, surreal, and oddly fitting. Silas, the quiet sound guy with grease under his nails and a penchant for tinkering with the club's ancient tech, was more than just a technician. He was a magician in his own right, wielding the power to mend the very reality that Eddie's bombing had helped fracture. With a flick of his wrist, Silas adjusted a dial, and the room shuddered as the distortions began to smooth out. The flickering light steadied, the warped timelines straightened, and the warped shadows retreated into their corners. The club sighed in relief, a breath held too long finally released. Lola appeared beside Eddie, her vibrant hair a splash of color against the dim backdrop. "About time he showed his hand," she murmured, a spark of admiration in her eyes. "We need every weapon we got if we were going to keep this place from tearing itself apart." Eddie nodded, the weight of the moment settling over him. Here was an ally he hadn't fully understood, until now a hidden strength that could tip the scales in their looming battle against Victor Crane's relentless pursuit of control. Just then, Moss materialized from the shadows, his bowler hat perched jauntily on his head, a knowing smirk curving his lips. "Well done, Silas," he said, voice rich with cryptic approval. "The balance holds for now. But the dance is far from over." The club's fragile equilibrium had been restored, but the underlying tension remained taut, a silent drumbeat heralding the chaos still to come. Silas's unveiling had shifted the game, forging a stronger front among the defenders of the laughter cabinet's wild magic. Eddie's ironic smile returned, tempered by a renewed sense of purpose. Failure might have been his weapon, but now he wasn't alone. Together, they would face the absurdity, the danger, and the dark humor that defined their surreal world. As Silas returned his attention to the soundboard, weaving his quiet magic through the circuits and waves, Eddie felt the unmistakable thrill of possibility. The club was alive, fragile, and dangerously unpredictable, but with allies like these, maybe, just maybe, the laughter would win. But the question lingered in the air like an unfinished joke. How far was Victor willing to go to wrest control? And could their newfound alliance hold the line when the final punchline came crashing down? Eddie squared his shoulders, ready for whatever came next. The Laughter Cabinet wasn't just a club anymore, it was a battleground, and he was finally playing offense. The stage lights dimmed, the crowd's murmur swelling beyond the walls, and somewhere deep inside, a new joke was forming, one that only failure could deliver, and only the bravest could tell. The night was far from over, and the laughter, well, it was just getting started. Victor Crane's reign within the Laughter Cabinet was unraveling, thread by delicate thread, just as the surreal air of the underground club quivered with anticipation. The once impenetrable fortress of his control was now a fragile illusion, cracking under the weight of Eddie Malone's growing mastery over the art of bombing. The main stage was cast in shadows and neon glows, a kaleidoscope of shifting colors warped by Eddie's failed jokes that hung heavy in the air like invisible paint. With each deliberately disastrous punchline, the club's reality seemed to ripple and bend, a subtle warping of physics, a distortion of time's otherwise steady march. The audience, a motley crew of performers and loyal followers, watched with bated breath as Eddie turned failure into a weapon. A chaotic symphony that clashed brilliantly with Victor's cold precision. Victor stood at the edge of the chaos, his sharp suit immaculate, his calculating gaze now edged with a flicker of doubt. His loyal cadre of performers and insiders, once unwavering, now faltered under the unpredictable forces unleashed by Eddie and his allies. The walls of the club flickered, lights stuttered, and the carefully maintained order twisted into surreal disarray. Victor's smirk, once a symbol of absolute control, faded into a grimace as the club itself seemed to rebel against his will. Behind the scenes, Lola Sparks moved like a shadow, sharp-witted, rebellious, and fiercely loyal. Her brightly dyed hair was a beacon amid the dim quarters, her eyes alight with determination as she whispered strategy to Moss, the enigmatic gatekeeper. Moss, with his bowler hat tipped at a rakish angle, and that ever-present raised eyebrow, spoke in riddles that somehow made sense in this world of absurdity. Their quiet coordination was the subtle heartbeat keeping the fragile alliance alive. In the control room, Silas's fingers danced over soundboards and arcane devices, weaving sonic magic to stabilize the club's reality. His lean frame was taut with focus, eyes flashing with a blend of exhaustion and fierce loyalty. Every sound wave he manipulated was a thread in the tapestry of order, a counterpoint to the chaos Eddie conjured on stage. Jinx prowled the periphery, the mischievous foil whose attempts at sabotage had inadvertently become a wild card in the battle. His eclectic clothes rustled as he exchanged smirks and sly glances, an unpredictable element that kept Victor's followers off balance. The battle between order and chaos reached its crescendo as Eddie's bombing became surgical, a deliberate unraveling of the oppressive order Victor sought to impose. Each failed joke was a strike, each miss a small victory that chipped away at the corrupting influence that had once seemed invincible. Victor's voice rose, sharp and commanding, attempting to regain control, but the club twisted away from him like a living organism resisting a straitjacket. His loyalists began to falter, their obedience shattered by the wild, unpredictable reality shifts that Eddie and his allies orchestrated. As the final punchline echoed through the club, a surreal silence followed, a moment suspended between triumph and uncertainty. Victor Crane, once the master of this realm, now stood exposed, his plans dismantled, the corrupting power of control slipping through his fingers like smoke. Yet beneath the victory was a bittersweet truth. The club's balance was delicate, maintained by the tension between laughter and chaos, order and unpredictability. Eddie, now the reluctant steward of this precarious equilibrium, knew the fight was far from over. The shadows of control still lurked, and the club's reality remained a fragile tapestry woven from absurdity and dark hope. Victor's fall was not just the collapse of a man's ambition, but a reckoning with the nature of creativity, itself the eternal struggle between the desire to control and the need to embrace chaos. In this underworld of surreal comedy, victory was never absolute, and the laughter that kept reality alive was a double-edged sword. As the club settled into uneasy calm, Eddie exchanged a glance with Lola, Moss, Silas, and even Jinx, an unspoken promise that they would guard this strange magic together. The laughter cabinet had survived another storm, but its future depended on their willingness to embrace the absurd, to find strength in failure, and to laugh in the face of chaos. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, a new joke was waiting to be born, a joke that might just change everything again. The backstage lights flickered in their usual unreliable manner, casting long shadows that danced mockingly across the peeling paint and scuffed floorboards. Eddie Malone stood alone, his hands stuffed deep into the pockets of his worn jacket, the weight of the moment pressing down like a bad punchline lingering too long. The muffled laughter and murmurs from the main room, the beating heart of the laughter cabinet crept through the cracked door, a reminder that the world outside his solitary contemplation was still spinning, still unpredictable. He sighed, an ironic, wary sound that seemed to echo back at him from the walls themselves. Failure had become his currency, a strange and volatile coin that bought him this absurd power. The paradox was not lost on him. Only when he bombed on stage did his jokes unravel reality, bending it in ways no sane person could claim as anything but madness. And yet here he was embracing that madness with a hesitant grin twisting his lips. A voice purred from the shadows, sharp and familiar. Embracing failure is the most dangerous joke of all. Eddie turned to see Lola Sparks leaning casually against the doorframe, her brightly dyed hair a riotous flame in the dim light. Eyes sparkling with that fierce loyalty that had become his anchor in this swirling chaos. Dangerous, Eddie echoed, raising an eyebrow. Sounds like the kind of joke that could get you killed. Lola shrugged, stepping forward with the swagger of someone who had danced on the edge of trouble more times than she cared to count. Maybe. But it's also the joke that keeps this place alive. You're not just bombing Eddie. You're rewriting the punchline of reality itself. He let out a short, humorless laugh. Rewriting the punchline, huh? I always thought I was just bombing the setup. That's the thing about setups, Lola said, eyes gleaming with meta-awareness. They were just waiting for the right bomb to blow them wide open. Their banter was more than just witty repartee. It was the rhythm of two souls who had come to understand that absurdity and hope were not mutually exclusive, but intertwined like the threads of some cosmic joke only they could hear. Before Eddie could reply, a soft shuffle announced another presence. Moss emerged from the gloom, his bowler hat tilted at a rakish angle, the ever-present raised eyebrow giving him the air of a man who knew far too much and wasn't inclined to share. Balance, Moss intoned, his voice a peculiar mix of jest and gravity, is the punchline we are all waiting for. But beware, to maintain it, one must first embrace the chaos that threatens to upstage the order. Eddie felt the weight of those words settle over him like a cloak. The club was a fragile ecosystem, a place where laughter and chaos danced on a knife edge, each threatening to undo the other. And he, a man who had spent years running from failure, was now its unlikely steward. How do I keep from losing myself in all this? Eddie asked quietly. Moss smiled, a slow, enigmatic curve of the lips, by knowing that sometimes the joke is on you. As the cryptic words hung in the air, a new sound filtered in, a low hum of electricity and shifting frequencies. Silas, the club's unassuming sound technician, appeared at the edge of the room, fingers deftly adjusting dials and sliders. His glasses caught the light, reflecting a kaleidoscope of reality, bending distortions that shimmered faintly around the club's edges. Ready to amplify the chaos responsibly, Silas called out, a mischievous grin tugging at his lips. Eddie nodded, feeling the strange thrill of purpose surge through his veins. This was no longer about hiding from failure or fearing the unknown. It was about wielding the unpredictable, turning his worst moments into weapons of surreal change. The laughter that once crushed him now echoed as a rallying cry. He stepped toward the stage, the familiar creak of the floorboards beneath his feet grounding him in this absurd reality. The club held its breath, reality itself trembling on the cusp of transformation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Eddie began, voice steady despite the chaos swirling around him, "welcome to the grand finale of failure." And with that, the bomb dropped, not a failure, but a beginning. The laughter that followed was both a release and a promise, a darkly hopeful melody that would carry Eddie and the laughter cabinet into whatever twisted, wonderful future awaited. Because in this underground sanctuary of fractured jokes and fractured realities, Eddie Malone had finally found his truth, that sometimes, to succeed, you have to bomb spectacularly and embrace the chaos that comes with it. The curtain was closing on the old Eddie, but the stage was just opening for the new act, one where failure was not the end, but the punchline that kept the world spinning madly on. The air shimmered with possibility, and the faint scent of burnt coffee mingled with the tang of sweat and anticipation. Eddie's ironic smile deepened as he looked out over the dimly lit seats, each empty one a canvas for the absurd stories yet to unfold. The laughter cabinet was alive, unstable, and utterly, wonderfully chaotic, and so was he. The air in the laughter cabinet felt different tonight, thicker somehow, as if all the accumulated laughter, failures, and whispered secrets had congealed into a tangible presence. Eddie Malone stood center stage, the spotlight washing over his slightly rumpled blazer and faded band t-shirt, casting long shadows that danced like mischievous jesters on the cracked brick walls. The audience, a motley crew of the club's most loyal denizens, leaned forward with expectant eyes, waiting for the next absurd turn of phrase. The next cosmic punchline that might ripple reality, just enough to remind them all that here, laughter was more than mere noise. Eddie cleared his throat, feeling the familiar flutter of nerves mixed with an undercurrent of something new purpose. He launched into a set that was part self-mockery, part surreal observation, weaving tales of failed punchlines and cosmic coincidences that blurred the line between his life and his jokes. He began, voice rough but steady. "Bombing used to feel like falling off a cliff. Now, it's more like tripping over the fabric of reality, except instead of crashing, you land somewhere. Stranger." The crowd erupted, not just with laughter, but with that unmistakable sensation of shared understanding, the kind that only comes from knowing the absurd dance between failure and power. Eddie's ironic smile deepened, the weight of past embarrassments momentarily lifting as he embraced the chaotic magic that had once threatened to consume him. Backstage, the scent of stale coffee mingled with the faint aroma of sweat and worn leather. Lola Sparks leaned against a battered folding chair, her brightly dyed hair catching the flickering neon light that slipped through the cracked window. She tossed a wry grin Eddie's way. "You're finally getting the hang of this, she teased, lifting her chipped coffee mug in a mock toast. Eddie chuckled, the sound rough but genuine. "Don't get used to it," he replied, feeling the warmth of friendship settle around him like a well-worn jacket. They traded stories, half serious and half joking, about the night's set and the strange, unpredictable ways the club's reality seemed to pulse with their every word. In this small moment, the chaos felt less like a curse and more like a shared secret, a living thing they were learning to nurture rather than fear. Not far away, Moss, the club's enigmatic gatekeeper, hovered over the ancient soundboard, his perpetually raised eyebrow furrowed in concentration. Beside him, Silas adjusted a tangle of cables and knobs, his fingers moving with practiced ease as if coaxing the very essence of the club's magic through the technology. Carla stood nearby, her calm presence anchoring the trio as they worked in tandem to stabilize the subtle shifts Eddie's performance had set in motion. "The threads are holding," Moss murmured, his voice a cryptic blend of relief and caution. "But the balance remains delicate. It's up to Eddie now, his will, his wit, his acceptance of the absurd." Meanwhile, near the dim emergency exit, Jinx approached with a reluctant smirk, a crumpled notebook in hand. "Thought you might need some new material," he said, voice tinged with the usual mix of rivalry and respect. Eddie took the notebook, the gesture a fragile olive branch forged in the shared crucible of the club's strange magic. As the night deepened, Eddie felt the full weight of his new role settle around him, not just as a performer who bombed to wield power, but as a guardian tasked with preserving the delicate equilibrium between laughter and chaos. It was a responsibility that demanded resilience, humor, and a willingness to embrace the unpredictable. The Laughter Cabinet was no longer just a club, it was a living, breathing entity shaped by its performers' failures and triumphs. And Eddie Malone, with his ironic smile and wary eyes, was at its heart, ready to write the next act in its endlessly unfolding, absurd story. But as the final echoes of laughter faded into the night, a question lingered in Eddie's mind, sharp and insistent. How long could he keep the balance before the chaos tipped too far? The stage was set. The next joke was his to deliver, and with it, the fate of the world as he knew it. He took a deep breath, stepped into the spotlight once more, and grinned. "Well," he said, "let's see where the punchline takes us next." The chatter in the Laughter Cabinet had settled into a peculiar hush, the kind that vibrates with anticipation rather than silence. Eddie Malone stood just beyond the curtain, his heart thudding erratically against his ribs like a percussionist eager to begin. The dim underground space felt alive, as if the very bricks and mortar were leaning in to witness this final act. His disheveled frame, usually swallowed by shadows, was now starkly outlined by the bright spotlight that awaited him. His ironic smile quirked uncertainly, a blend of exhaustion, defiance, and something else, hope, perhaps. He took a breath that carried the weight of years of faded glory, public meltdown, and the strange, surreal journey that had led him here. The Laughter Cabinet was no ordinary stage, and this was no ordinary set. Tonight, Eddie would blur the boundaries between comedy and reality, failure and power, loneliness and connection. As he stepped onto the stage, the spotlight's glow seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. The gathered crowd was a kaleidoscope of faces, some familiar, some strange, some flickering in and out of focus, like figments caught between dimensions. The air was thick with expectancy, a cocktail of nervous energy and wonder that made the hairs on the back of Eddie's neck stand on end. Clearing his throat, Eddie launched into his first Joker self-deprecating quip about his career's spectacular nosedive. The punchline landed with a ripple, not just through the audience, but through the very fabric of the club. The walls shimmered, undulating like waves caught in laughter's undertow. The ceiling above melted away, revealing a vast starlit sky where constellations winked in time with his cadence. Shadows detached themselves from their owners, pirouetting mischievously in the periphery. Each failed joke, each awkward silence, sent ripples through reality. Eddie's voice, layered and refracted like a cosmic echo, wove a tapestry of absurdity and meta-humor. He riffed on his failures, his insecurities, and the very nature of performance, drawing the audience into a vortex where the line between performer and reality dissolved. Backstage, Lola Sparks leaned forward, her bright hair catching the fractured light as she exchanged a glance with Moss, whose raised eyebrow suggested a rare moment of genuine surprise. Carla wiped a glass, her usual dry humor replaced by a awestruck silence, while Silas adjusted his headphones, fingers twitching to manipulate the club's subtle technological magic. Victor Crane stood apart, his cold smirk faltering as the club's reality slipped from his grasp. His meticulously crafted plans unraveled in the face of Eddie's chaotic brilliance. The power that had once seemed so easily controlled now danced on the edge of wild unpredictability, fueled by Eddie's acceptance of his paradoxical gift. Eddie's final punchline echoed through the club, a cosmic joke that was equal parts confession and celebration. The audience erupted in laughter, a sound that felt both intimate and infinite, reverberating beyond the club's walls and into the world itself. The laughter was no longer a symptom of failure, but a declaration of victory, the victory of embracing absurdity, of finding strength in vulnerability, and of crafting meaning from chaos. As the applause swelled, Eddie stood alone, the spotlight warming his weary eyes. The ironic smile softened into something genuine, a quiet acceptance of self, and a readiness to steward the delicate balance between laughter and chaos. The world outside the laughter cabinet would never be the same, and neither would he. The last laugh belonged to Eddie Malone, the comedian who bombed to save reality. But as the echoes faded, a faint, mischievous chuckle slipped through the cracks, reminding everyone that in this club, the joke was never truly over.